bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground. What up, folks? Mikey G, Maddie Mintz, and Drasko-V is in the house, baby. We are going to have a fun night tonight. Super freaking excited. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, Maddie, how you doing, brother?
Dude, life is good, man. Life is good. It's been so first Florida summer. Not gonna lie, I get all the jokes about the heat. It is a little bit dicey when it gets. You got to get to the car. But other than that, man, life's been awesome. I think I talked about vacation already since we last caught up. Man, just jiving. I'm getting ready. I got a big trip planned. I'm going to be heading across the pond over there to Italia for a little bit. So that's going to be fun. So just planning that trip, man. How about yourself? You got some big things coming in your life.
Yeah, bro. Little kid coming this weekend. We can plan because we got a little induction situation going. It's not like, although I have, we did the whole baby class thing. Not the the whole breathing thing class. I don't think that exists. I think that was like big in the 80s and 90s when we grew up. But it's more like
just the movies now.
Yeah, it's like the movies, and that's why I was bringing it up. They, the movies always make it seem like this like emergency situation. Holy crap, your wife's about to have a baby. She might have a baby in her car. That's totally not how real life works. Plus, we are able to get it planned. So, like, dude, we got movies set up because this process apparently can take a lot longer than like a regular situation. Okay. So, we got movies. What's
the first movie in the list? What's the first movie in the list? That's the only one I care
about.
Well,
sorry, I say movies and shows. I'm forcing my wife to watch, and I just started this. I think it's awesome. It's called Foundation on Apple TV. Have you heard of this, Drasko-V? Oh,
I've
dude,
not heard of
it's a
that.
new sci-fi. I think it was written specifically for TV. It's not like a book adaptation, and it's set like way in the future and multiple galaxies. I think the population is like 10 trillion or something crazy, and this guy foresees the future. But it's every sci-fi thing, just dealing with like dark and light and how does humanity not destroy each other? But it's good, man. I think it's really good. So we're watching that. There's a new kind of like Homeland terror, anti-terrorist, terrorist
One of
type
those. Got
military
it. Okay.
shows on Prime. We'll watch that, and then I don't know what else we're gonna do, dude. I don't know what
Dude,
else.
if you're on Prime, that show with Chris Pratt was awesome.
Watched it. It's been there, done
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I like that
Well,
one. I thought it was,
that was
what
a
was
good
it?
one.
The
That was a
Terminal
good one.
List, I think it was called.
Something like that, man. Yeah.
My only complaint, isn't that the one at the end where he was like, I'm gonna go get
spoiler
revenge on everybody? I'm not gonna give it like, oh, but it's the revenge list, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my complaint about the situation is at the end it was like, okay, this revenge, like, this is getting way
It went a little
over
far.
the top.
So, okay. All right. Well, before
Come
we get
on,
into this,
dog.
just general overarching principle, can we agree that I do feel like maybe, and Drasko-V, maybe you have some insight on this because you work with some pretty big names here. I feel like there is almost like an unwritten rule that if you're going to do some type of vigilante movie, you can't end it with like the vigilante seeming like it can't seemingly be justified, right? Every great vigilante movie at the end, the fact that they were like going after this is kind of what eats them up from the inside. I feel like that's a core theme to just kind of balance things out. What do
I
you
hear
think?
what you're saying.
Yeah. How did the Punisher end? Remember the Punisher? Because the Punisher was like that was the top
Yeah.
one in terms of like
Right.
that
sure.
feeling of revenge and destruction, right? But how did it end? I can't remember.
I don't
Was it-
remember.
Well, so in the movie,
No, in
it
the
ends
in
up-
the series and in the Netflix series. Yeah.
So the problem with the Netflix series is they were going to do a new season, but then it didn't get renewed because the whole thing between Marvel and Netflix.
Yeah.
And so we didn't get to actually see how it concluded, but it was going down that path, man. He was not helping himself anymore with that whole like
Right.
rage
Yeah.
thing. But
Anyway, I mean, it ended in the sense that like he's bringing fully automatic weapons into downtown and throwing out rocket launchers and shit, right? Like it's like, okay, man, now we've gotten over the top. Like the first couple were very methodical. It was kind of realistic. It was cool and like pretty badass. A little Black Ops like vibe to it. And then by the end, it's like, okay, you guys just lost all sense of writing and you want to blow shit up.
they got to like keep it's hard because they get the thrill factor and they got to keep pushing it. You know what I mean? And by the end of a season, like, what are you left with? But like, Jerry Bruckheimer and that kind of stuff.
It was that.
Yeah,
so
he did a good job in the sense of representing that, like Maddie, you were saying, like that rage eating you. Usually like those types of movies, like it feels more like a hero that's just like feeling good. But in this one, he was like, you can tell it's like he did a good job acting in terms of like being eaten alive by revenge. So that was a good.
Yeah. And the other thing, I'll give shout out to Chris Pratt is that when I had to watch the Super Mario Brothers movie because I grew up with it, and that was like,
okay,
I don't care that it's a kid animated movie. It was, and they did they did a nod to Rainbow Road in The Secret Jump, which was like, I caught up on that, but no one else would have known.
It.
Like, they were like, oh, they're just go-karting through Rainbow Road, but they made the actual jump that we spent hours trying to perfect in your basement. But I was like, Chris Pratt as Mario, like that's a total miss. I still don't think it was like perfect, but it didn't annoy me as much as I thought it would. So I'll give him that a little bit. But enough of that. That was a fun intro conversation. But let's get to the man, the myth, and legend, Drasko-V. I'm excited. We got AT Dubstep in chat. I'm excited for our community to watch this after it gets posted up on YouTube. People need to know your name. But Maddie, let's do the introduction and we'll get into it.
All right. Well, here's the thing, man. We have had him on the show. This is a throwback, but a interesting one because this is even dating back before We were recording our streams, putting them up on YouTube. This is like OG guest when it comes to midlife crisis. And I'm excited about this because we're going to have a lot to catch up on. But if you have not met or do not know of Drasko-V yet, here's the thing: when you blend art and then tech, you're going to get Drasko-V, right? And he's been recognized for that on many occasions. Let's see, featured in the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum. You had a live art project that was on Santa Monica's Clock Tower building, which was something, if I understand it correctly, and you may have to feel free to tweak this, but it looks like it basically took art and kind of shaped it as the environmental data in real time. It was like taking in real time environmental data, and that was changing what the art was doing on the projection. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually happening next month. But that is the idea to kind of that's a good project that kind of summarizes my my interest, because that was a personal initiative. I mean, working with the city, of course, but the idea was to I was always like super interested in sensory data elements and technology, but art as well. So I was always experimenting with these ideas of like how to combine those worlds, and the idea with the clock tower is to basically use this to kind of create the feeling of, or to represent this kind of living organism of the city and of the environment in Santa Monica. So capturing everything from, the temperature, the wind speed, the wind direction, noise levels, what's pretty much anything that's happening in this kind of living organism of the city, and using that data to kind of shape and create the abstract visuals and sound that's going to be projected. So
I love it.
That's kind of the general overview. There's a lot more nerdy detail in that, but
that's been a theme with you, is not just art. I mean, the title I can think of is just, and it sounds very generic, but it's just overall creative, because you have background in music, you've done creative directing, music production, you have even going back to the project when it comes like the blend of art and sound, and how that goes together, and just multiple different data points and stimulating that brain from multiple different angles seems to be something that you focused on. And you've worked with some of the biggest that are out there. I mean, collaborated, looks like Google, IBM, HBO, Warner Brothers, and that's what the art side of it. But then what blew my mind was award-winning creative director and music producer working with stuff. You got labels here: Detroit Underground, working with films. Let's see here, Blade Runner 2049.
Hell yeah.
And then I saw Tenet on there, and I'm just going to say, love that movie, because anytime I see somebody collabing with Christopher Nolan, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a good conversation. So here's the thing. Your resume is insane, but what it comes down to is I'm really excited because it's, like I said, you're a true creative. You're thinking outside of the box. I can say that, dating back, and we'll get into it, but just kind of a throwback to our start when it came to Web3 and NFTs specifically during the heyday of everything. I distinctly remember Mike getting me really excited about this. And all of us, and every day he was like, you got to join these Discords. You got to join these Discords. You got to join these. I'm sure you remember this phase, right? And I'm joining all of these things, and all of them are doing relatively the same thing. And our buddy says, hey, you got to check in on this other project, Rengoku Legends, and check it out. They have this cool feature, and they've kind of gamified interacting with the community. And I was like, okay, sure. Because at this time, everybody said they were different, but everybody was the same.
Right.
And this was the first time I went in. I was like, this is fun. It was the first place I said, I will log in, go check in. I got to make sure I'm doing my stuff here to get my points and build it up. But I felt interactive. I felt like I was actually part of a team. And I thought that was a really cool thing. So yeah, man, I love the way you guys have been pushing boundaries. You're thinking outside of the box. And I'm really excited to catch up to see how you've taken that thought process and bring it into today. So welcome to the show, man. Welcome back.
Thanks, man. Happy to chat with you guys.
Hell yes, man. And we're going to do this. Actually, I'm going to put you on the spot, and it's okay if you have no answers and you feel uncomfortable. But the other one the thing that we do is ask before we come on live to share an interesting fact about yourself that people might not normally know. If something doesn't come straight to mind, it's totally cool and we keep on going. But I'll give you a softball in the sense that it can be something as simple as like, hey, I can eat 10 pizzas at a sitting. Like, it doesn't have to be like I won some crazy.
There's too many, man. You gotta pick a category. I can give you the food one right away. Like even with that, like
All right, give
I'll
us
have
the
periods.
food. Give us the food one.
I mean, this is not that interesting at all. I mean, compared to a bunch of my weirdnesses, I'm sure. But I have these phases of fasting and not fasting. So I'll have a phase of a couple of months of eating just like, within a 4-hour gap or a 5-hour gap. And it's
Right.
not even really
Intermittent.
forcing it. I just kind of get, I just kind of fall into that type of phase.
Yep.
And then I'll have periods where I like literally eat like crazy, So
I
I mean,
love it.
that's not I feel like I ruined your potential
No.
interesting answer.
No,
but
man. First
let me
of
think
all-
for a sec. Let me think for a sec. Something weird and interesting.
Well, it's gonna be tough because just reading through your resume, I'm like, well, you've already done everything. So now you gotta like find something interesting after you've already done all of these amazing things. But I'm curious.
Yeah,
How about you
man.
put it in the back of the head and you can wind it
Sure,
into the
man,
conversation
sure.
as
It's
we
gonna
go.
come out through the convo, man. As we talk,
Oh,
sure.
you'll
I know
find
it
out
will.
every part of my weird.
All right, well, here's
brain.
I got a question for you though. This will get the juices going. What's your favorite movie? One of them.
Oh
An
man,
FPV.
I was thinking about that the other day actually, and I have this convo regularly with one of my friends because it's that really depends on kind of like the state of life that you're in and what you
Right,
resonate
right.
with, So it's
Ooh.
like I remember so many times of picking one, and then there's a moment where you're like, oh man, this is it.
Yeah.
So what's the current one then in your phase of life now?
Oh man, actually, I'm not really watching and listening to almost anything these days because I've been doing so much creating and I've kind of
Right.
been enjoying
Right.
being in silence and like when you're, for me at least, when I'm surrounded by screens a lot of the time, the silence and peace is like what I actually need instead of entertainment,
Isn't that interesting? Because I feel the same way. That's
Yeah.
such a great point. Already we haven't even got into it and you're just dropping bombs because I think people don't talk about that as much as they need to. Like, dude, if
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by screens all the time, I feel like my brain starts shutting down. That's a fantastic point.
Yeah, I mean, like this is definitely not like the top pick in terms of movies, but just thinking of discussions I've had recently with some friends. One of the aspects that are cool to me when it comes to movies is when they manage to communicate a certain concept in a way where you almost don't even consciously recognize it, right? And one example is Ex Machina, right? And the example in that movie was I realized after watching the movie that even though I knew that it was the robot, right? The girl was the robot, you still had the emotional sense of, like, there was still even as a viewer of the movie, you had the emotional connection with the robot, right?
Right.
And they totally managed to kind of communicate that idea of how easily it is to be tricked in perception when it comes to that whole idea of AI becoming a human. So those types of, I mean, that's not the movie I would pick, but those types of, or like Interstellar, even though it's kind of such a mainstream movie, because people love to pick like very specific like types of like directors that are
Right.
usually when people discuss movies, it's almost you can almost kind of like, I mean, people that are into film, you can almost kind of guess which directors they're gonna pick because those are the directors you're supposed to pick if you're like a connoisseur of movies, right? But
right.
I mean, Interstellar is another example to me because it was there was a lot of things in that movie that were difficult to visualize and communicate, especially in a 2-hour movie.
Right.
Even visually, for example, how they represented like dimensions and time, or that idea of love and how love was this invisible thing that they still represented in the movie as a factor. Like that, those types of things are really, that's what stays in my memory when it comes to movies.
I love it. I love it. That's such a great point, and it also makes me think of. It's one thing to see a movie; it's another thing to see a film, if that makes sense.
For sure.
And it's like when you take me. When you can pull out different emotions and really make it an art form, that's when it's just truly enjoyable to look back on. And I agree with you. And what a great point. For example, in Interstellar, how do you show on a screen? How do you visualize something like love?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What would that look like? I had a similar moment with the new, well, not new now because they're coming up with the sequel already. But did you see Dune by any chance?
Mm-hmm.
The concept of how they were going to show the voice, like what do you do? Because in the book, he's in his head, and
Yeah.
he's thinking, and it's like, how are they going to
Yeah.
convey that? And just I'm always
Yeah.
curious how directors will pull that off. So anyway, very cool. That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
I'll mention something's going to come to me within the next hour, so I'll definitely
All
bring
right,
it up.
we're gonna get it.
Oh no,
We're gonna get
I
it.
love it. I mean, dude, this is already extremely fruitful conversations, and like I said when we were offline, I'm so glad we continued to talk because
Yeah, man.
you are at top of the list of one of the like more interesting people that we've talked to. I mean, we had to do
Thanks,
we had to do our fair share of like
Filtering.
projects that do not exist, and we're past the project thing. We just talk to interesting people and companies, really, right? That's where we're really interested in the journey, the entrepreneurship, like how people are creating like yourself. So this is going to be fantastic. But let's do it. Let's reset a little bit. Again, we like the episode 1 and 2. We can do a condensed version, but how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today, man? Give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 being not full childhood story, really your influences, mentors, family members, like memories that helped mold your mindset. 2 is your professional career, some of the stuff that Matt went through. Again, mentors, influences, stories that stuck out to help, again, progress the mind, influences. And then episode 3 is when we can we'll touch base on Rengoku, the state, what it has. We'll talk about kind of the war stories of seeing such hype and then going through the lows. But I'd love to talk about really the future learning lessons, pain points, and stuff that you're dealing with. And I think when we put that all together, it's going to be a beautiful and amazing conversation. So let's start with episode 1, man.
Sure, man. Well, I've had such a long, deep movie-like life with a lot of paths and ups and downs. It would be, it's hard. I mean, my brain is just gonna pick something now and start sharing, so it's not really like necessarily like a linear order or the most important point.
We're good with that.
Be linear at all. That's all right.
And it's interesting, man, when it comes to like your question about influences and how that shapes a person or like an artist or a creative person in general. I thought about that a lot because I've had, that came into a complete form only a couple of years ago for me, actually, right? Like I've had a long period of and I'm not sure if I don't think everybody's like this. I think there's a wide range of how people and brains are, obviously, but I've definitely always had a deep need and desire for creating and expressing, right? And that is not attached to any particular medium artistically. But I haven't had I didn't know what that should sound and look and feel like, right? But there was the need for it. And to get there, I think to get to a complete, like, authentic part of that, like to become an authentic creator, meaning that, there's a lot of like, there's a big range of creators too, I think. And I don't mean this any like better or worse way, but it's like the more you discover yourself, right, as a person, the more you experience, the more philosophies you have, the more you understand, the more you explore, right? All of that is going to play a much bigger factor in getting towards that authenticity of like what you want to express, right, artistically. Right. So so for me it was basically it took a long time, just because I think I had such a complicated feeling of what needed to kind of how I wanted to create and what I wanted to create, both because I had a lot of interests, right? Like I was never I'm not, that's why it's difficult for me to even explain what I am, or when people ask like what you do, right? Like Maddie, you were saying, it's like I was never like just a designer or an artist or a music producer. I mean, music was definitely a big part of the kind of hands-on craftsmanship on my end, but it still was just an element of the overall kind of conceptual ideas of what I wanted to create. So so I just took a I mean, I'm not skipping your question. I just wanted to kind of preface this with this.
This is super helpful into the fact that I kind of almost I was hearing, let you finish, is like, it seems like there was some self-awareness of what creative meant to you, but were there like societal pressures or industry pressures that are making you think that you should be a certain way? Was that part of it too, or where were you
That
going?
was, yeah, there was definitely a period of like, of not being aware and not being free enough to know that like you can
Hmm.
do anything, right? There was definitely a period of thinking like, oh, you need to be this or be that or stick to this, right?
Right.
But it was also just me not knowing like what it is that how to transform. Like, I mean, just when you mentioned childhood, like I remember getting I got a gift that was a remote controlled like boat or like a remote controlled car, and right
Hmm.
away I took it apart just to because I enjoyed the look and feel of like the circuit board, right? And I'm not an engineer and I don't do like that type of stuff, but I like the feeling and the look of that, right? So
Hmm.
that type of thing, it's like, and then it's like, what does this mean? What do I do with that, right? And then
Right.
there was an element of like loving music, and then these concepts of like combining things, and then on top of that, the need to figure out like what is it and why you want to communicate something artistically, and that for me just like it took time.
Right.
To
Yeah.
get to the point of like kind of like to get to the point of knowing the direction to kind of pursue,
Right.
right? Of kind of like how and what to express. I mean, it's of course still just the starting point of like the being, developing myself as a creative, as an
Sure.
artist, but it's like a lot of those pieces like came together over time. And it was a combination of like discovering kind of like aesthetically what feels good, right? Like what type of aesthetics,
Right.
visually, what type of like sound, what type of like philosophies to integrate, right? Like what type
Right.
of general things I enjoy and like. And to me it's always about like I love combining all those things, right? So if
Hmm.
I love, like, for example, just a vague example of what I'm saying, it's like like I love the aesthetics and the complexity and like the visual complexity in nature and biology, like everything, just as a simple example, like zooming in on like the texture of like the leaf or like,
Right.
galaxies and, and
Yeah.
everything and anything in between, combining that with like what I was saying with circuitry and boards, combining that with music, combining that with certain philosophies, like ancient types of like texts and philosophies to everything else, and then like what does that mean when that all comes together, like how do you express that visually and musically, right? And it's of
Right.
course still going to be abstract for the viewer, but for me at least it's coming to a place where it makes sense, right? So
Yeah.
I in the
Sure.
clock tower, it's kind of like uh it's a solid example of that because visually and sound wise it's going to be kind of like the aesthetic that makes sense to me, that feels good conceptually and technically. It's going to be involving those things. It's using nature and it's using the environment. Technologically it's using those parts that I like to play with, like sensory technologies and
Right.
stuff like that. So I don't even know what I was like. I don't even know
So
what
let's
the
do
question was
this.
or what
I think you
Well,
gave us a treasure trove of information, which is awesome, which is still like you're kind of leaving us wanting more about like what was that self-realization over
yeah.
the past couple years. But before we get there, let's talk about young Drasko-V, which is like you gave us the boat thing. Maybe some simple questions to answer are, where are you from? Were you close to your family? Were you not close to your family? Were you into video games?
Yeah.
Were you
Well,
into
let's
athletics? Were you drawing at a young age, or what was starting to formulate some of your passions there? Maddie, go ahead and add something.
Yeah, just what environmental conditions do you think maybe shaped who you were then and like who you were becoming?
Yeah,
Whatever it might be. It could be a person, it could be a coach, it could be, again, where Mike said, like where you grew up, right? If you grow up in New York City, it's very different than growing up in Iowa, right?
right.
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
what are some of those things for you?
Yeah, man. Oh man, that's a deep question. I think, yeah, I think the environment, the range of like environmental scenarios in my life definitely helped kind of shape me as a full person, right? In
Right.
terms
Yeah.
of like the darkness to light, which is like in the moment you don't want anything negative, but like having that whole spectrum is like a pretty amazing thing because that opens you up
True.
creatively and philosophically, like in the deepest ways,
For
right?
sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
So I've had a wide range of that. I mean, nothing terrible, of course, but
How about in the
uh,
context of youth, though?
Is like
youth,
any
yeah.
light bulb moments or things like that where you're like,
Well,
ooh.
the first major moment when it comes to like art or creativity or like going in this direction was, so when I was in, I mean, to give you a quick recap, um I was born in Belgrade, Serbia. I lived there until I was about like 10 years old, and then I moved to Canada, Toronto, Canada. And fairly like regular path in regular life. Like I wasn't really considering myself an artist or a creative person at all, right? I was kind of
Hmm.
pursuing um uh I mean, the thing that when I started university, it was for information technology. So I did
Right.
1 year of information technology, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but there was literally a day where and I didn't even, I didn't, I'm not musically trained even now. Like, I don't know any music theory or anything. It's crazy. Like, I used to be kind of like hiding that, but now I love saying it because I did, pretty legit things in all these areas, and people are like, what? Like,
Mhm.
how's that even possible?
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not like musically trained. I did so after 1 year of university in information technology, there was like one moment where all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have to do music. Okay, I gotta get into music. And it was such of like knowing that it, my mom and dad were kind of like, losing their minds. They're like, oh my God, you're gonna be a DJ? Like, no, that's like how you're gonna, this is crazy. Like, you gotta stay in university. And like, all like in my family, it's like a bunch of like engineers, and
Right.
was the finishing university was like the main thing to do.
How did that
And
manifest itself, though? Were you literally
man, I don't
walking
know.
and you were like, music, this is it? Or you were at a party, or you just don't even remember?
Yeah, it was just like a moment that all of a sudden I was like, something happened in the brain where I was like,
That's
oh, this is
crazy.
what I have to do. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was crazy too, because it was such a knowing that, usually like, because I quit university after that and I went to audio engineering school for like just a year and a half. It was a pretty quick program.
Yeah.
Um, but even that decision was like, normally it would be like, oh, how am I even like, my parents are gonna kill me. How do I even,
Right.
For sure.
mention this? I mean, it's a different time now. Like now it's like it makes sense to like, oh, it almost makes sense to not go to school these days and to university. But back then it
For
was,
sure.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing
so
though is really interesting. You're basically saying like, yes, you were curious as a kid. You liked how things interact. You have the boat story, but you're growing up in what would say regular vanilla um, youth, in the sense that like you went to school, you were going to college, your parents kind of, expected you to be some type of professional and make a certain amount of money. And then all of a sudden you're like, no, that is not it.
yeah,
It's music for me. Looking
yeah.
back, and I think this is the last kind of youth question I'll ask, is looking back on your youth, do you think any, not trying to dissect why you had that aha moment, is there anything before that might have happened that you think might have just sporadically helped spark that, or it was
I
really
really, I
just
really,
like a strike of
yeah,
lightning?
yeah. I don't think so, man. I really
That's
don't think
awesome.
it was anything. It feels like, I mean, of course, it's like, our brains tell
Right.
stories whenever we think of the
Sure.
past. So it's like I could be coming up with anything now, but it wasn't like it felt much deeper and ingrained than any external idea that could have triggered it. It wasn't like, oh, I like this, I'm gonna
Right.
do it. It was like, oh, like this is just like, this is what I have to do. It's like nothing else is gonna, like, this is gonna happen. Nothing else is gonna
Mm,
happen. And I'm not trying to sound like I've had some like destiny or that. I'm just
Right.
explaining the feeling. It was like that really was the feeling. It was like, oh, this is gonna happen. And I was totally relaxed. Like I didn't even have the feeling of there was no feeling of worry or stress. It's like I
Right.
knew that this is what I was going to be doing,
mm,
right? At least in that initial period.
Dude, that's so
Yeah.
that's cool.
beautiful to hear, because people get there in many different ways, right? Like I got sick and I got sick and I got there that way, right? I had this
Yeah.
sense of
Yeah.
clarity of self-awareness, who I was, what I loved, what I was interested in. But it can come in forms like you too. I mean, there's
Well,
reason
yeah,
there's reasons why the term aha moment happens, right? Like that happens for
yeah,
people,
yeah.
and you don't have to have a reason for everything. I think people always want a reason for everything, and I love that
Yeah.
response.
Yeah, but that was like the easy beginning. Like that click was just like setting me on the direction, but then the real shifts, like I had a big period with there were periods of darkness that really shifted me as a person, that kind of
Right,
For
woke me
sure.
up to things
right.
in a much deeper way. And like, like sickness was one of them too for me. I had like
Yeah.
a 6-year journey of like dying from parasites, and that like totally transforms you as a person, right? When you
I can
have
imagine. Well, let's do this though.
Wow.
I think unless Maddie, you have any other questions about up to the aha moment, I think we can move on and talk about like music as a thing and that progression. Are you cool with that, Maddie?
Yeah, yeah. And I was just going to say, to the flip side of the coin of the aha moment is you had the courage to stay with it. I think people have aha moments. In fact, I'd say I think most people have
yeah.
an aha moment, right? But the world um, kind of beats them out of us pretty quickly. You know what I mean? To your point, like if everyone in your family is an engineer, you're already in college for engineering, and all of a sudden you want to be, pursue music. Most people would have a tough time with that because even if they felt convicted, the world around them would be like, no, 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 go get that
Yeah,
secure job.
yeah, yeah,
And to Mike's point, that pressure doesn't go away. It just builds, right, with this resentment and unhappiness about what you're doing in life. And so, and we all have our challenges. Like you said, it's not like you still had hurdles to overcome. We all do. But I think a lot of people hear a story like that and they can probably look back in their life at a moment like that for them. And whether it be fear or pressure or whatever it might be financially, they didn't chase it. And so I
Yeah.
think it's really cool you chased it. And that's been a source of joy in your life, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point, Maddie.
yeah, man. Yeah. I guess two things that just like sparked in my mind based on that point is, the fear and the anxiety of like not doing things can sometimes be a great driver for you to kind of like, to get to it like that. For me, I mean, for like I suffer a lot with anxiety in terms of like needing to create, right? And that pushes me like to do shit, right? Because
Right.
it's like this feeling of like life ending for me is at least when it may sound ridiculous, but when I connect it to art and the things that I feel I need to create, it gives me a lot of pressure, and that really pushes me to get to it. And then on the other point too of like having, I guess, sticking with it, it's also a matter of luck too, because it's a combination of
Yes.
a combination of personality, right? Maybe my personality was just in that right range of like being able to do it for whatever reason, right? Everything like circumstances, environment, whatever the situation, timing, age, parents, whatever else, right? But yeah, man, I also got reminded of the quote by Bukowski where he says something. I'm paraphrasing, but he said, "There is nothing worse but too late," or something along those lines. There's a few things worse than too late, and it's like
Right.
that feeling of knowing that time, like that's it, man. When time passes, that's it. It's
Right.
just like it's hard to really realize that when you're younger, So it's
Right.
that's
Right.
one of like the key things that I've kind of been like blessed and cursed with. Like I've always had this extreme pressure with time, even when I was much younger. Like I've always had this extreme anxiety over like, shit, I gotta do this right now.
Right.
And I mean, I could have done a lot more. I'm not saying I was always like prolific,
Right.
but kind of like it's a blessing and a curse. But I've definitely had that like pressure to kind of have to get to it, And
No,
I
I
don't know
love
if
the
it's a
way
good or
you
a bad thing, man.
right. But I actually love the way you phrase that because there's we talk about ambition and discipline and all of these different themes, right? And this is just another way to talk about it. But I've never heard the explanation of this like relationship with time. I think it's a good. I think people, if you frame it in that way, could change
Yeah.
people's perspectives. I think somebody could listen to what you just said and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I've never thought of it that way. That might excite me to actually do something."
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Maddie, any thoughts?
I mean, I'll say this: people who have achieved great things have had that similar feeling, right? And I think that sometimes people maybe come to it on their own. I don't know. I think for most of us, though, what happens is some event occurs that makes us start to value that time, right? And that's why, like, these, you know, these like near death experiences, you'll have these people who have these, and then it totally shapes the rest of their life, because you know, when you think you only have 10 minutes left or 10 days left or 10 weeks left, you approach life differently. And then when all of a sudden that pressure goes away and you're like, wait, I have the rest of my life now, everything changes, man. You can't unfeel that. And so
Right.
there's a lot of people that is a big motivating factor. And I think that a lot of people who achieve, I think there's a beauty in the fact that, you know, we're finite, right? And so when you create that, it's like we only have this window of time. It's very impressive to see people who have done these extraordinary things in the same window of time we all basically have, not, you know, give or take some, but relatively on like the infinity scale, we're all given a very little bit. And it's just interesting to see how that works. But yeah, a little abstract, but those are my thoughts.
No, I love it. So Drasko, let's do this. I love the path that we're going down. Take us through some of those peaks and valleys, and maybe the what I'm interested to, it was the original comment of like, only since a couple years have I really come into like my true creative mindset and how I've gotten there. But I want to see young music Drasko-V starting out, and what your mindsets and ambitions might have been there, right? We're in college. Let's say you've made the shift. You obviously go get the education. You're starting to dip your toes in like, who is Drasko-V at this moment in time, and progress through those next maybe 10 years with some highlights for us.
Sure, man. So again, I'll give you kind of the high level recap,
Right.
and feel free to dig in wherever you want. Because you asked a couple of different layered questions there.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, I just you know, on a more boring kind of like timeline in terms of what happened. Yeah, so right after the audio engineering school, I can't remember how old I was, maybe like 21 or something. I started my business right away, which was just, you know, me essentially with a website trying to
Right.
get music and sound design gigs. And I started doing music and sound for that was a period of a lot of advertising agencies creating the microsites, you know, just
Right.
these custom interactive
Flash
websites for
sites,
whatever
right?
brands. Yeah, I mean, it was right after the Flash days, you know,
Okay.
so it was definitely that type of era.
Right.
So I kind of got in, you know, into this niche of like, I've never gone down the path of like regular music studios and like recording musicians.
Right.
I immediately jumped into this like niche digital world, which was always kind of my thing. Like I always looked for ways to really like be different, because I mean, even strategically, that's smart. So then the goal was to just kind of like, you know, build that music business essentially, and build myself as, you
Right.
know, this music producer creator. And very quickly within, you know, those few years, I did this passion for like doing more and integrating technology and creative stuff. I kind of expanded like both my own initial initiatives to the business to kind of offer, you know, interactive related
Right.
development, you know, services, and started doing some creative interactive installations. One of the first ones in Toronto was so there was the TED conference in Toronto. So for that, we did something kind of similar to the clock tower, where we set up a bunch of sensors in the, I think it was in the Royal Music Conservatory, this amazing building with amazing architecture in Toronto. And we basically used like the data from everything happening in the building to kind of shape how the overall ambience in the environment sounds. So people's activity was actually composing the music.
That's
So
pretty
that
cool.
was kind of like, that type of stuff was what I started getting into. But a lot of the stuff was like so early on that it wasn't you know, it was really hard to get clients or like paying,
Right.
you know, somebody to pay for stuff, because there's such different types of ideas that,
Yeah.
you know, brands or whoever, they don't even know if they want that or like what, you know, what value they would get from it. So there was a big mix of just like me finding ways to present these concepts like by myself in whatever way I can. But anyway, so that kind of led towards deciding to come to LA. Also not really sure why. It was just kind of a feeling. I definitely never felt, Toronto never felt like home. I felt like yeah, I just felt like I wanted to come to California. But then in that period, I think since I was like 24 to or like 25 to 30, 31 was when I had like a big health issue. Like I went to Barcelona for a couple of months and I picked up some bad parasite antibacteria there. And like, I mean, it's a long story, of course,
Right.
but that turned into like a really, really like literally a near death experience. I was on paper, I was dead when doctors were looking at, you know, whatever analysis I did. It was kind of like, how's this possible?
Jeez.
How is it possible to not
Wow.
have any gut flora or whatever, right? So to tie that into your first question of like, um, just to kind of throw this comment in, like when it comes to like the authenticity as a creative or as a person in general, that's very much tied to like knowing who you are and
Right.
becoming free of all these, societal and cultural and parental and environmental pressures, right? That's what it comes down
Yeah.
to. Like being
Right.
free means not being susceptible to expectations of anything else other than what you believe is right.
Right.
So that whole like journey of dying and like
Right.
everything else, right, being isolated and having to like still everything else that comes with that, and not to compare, right? Everything is relative. It's like
Right.
that's a dream compared to somebody
Yeah.
else, right? But that whole journey kind of resulted in the shift of me as a person, right? And becoming and starting to become more free and kind of like fearless, because the more you have nothing to lose. And
Right.
there were other periods like that too that are not necessarily health. It could be like whatever, all other categories of life, right? But I've had a couple of these phases in life that um, luckily pushed me to the point of just having to kind of and these are vague terms, but having to let go in a sense, kind of
Yeah.
like, man, I tried everything. I just literally got to surrender and be like, okay, let's see like what life is gonna do next. Like when it came to that point, that was the biggest shift of like becoming powerful as a person, right? Becoming like
Mhm.
free, becoming authentic, kind of like um much more fearless, all those things. But
Was
it's
so
weird, man. It's
so
weird.
that's an interesting comment though, because I want to like there's a practical side to that comment of letting go, right? Like when I think like just letting go and let life happen, throwing caution to the wind type of thing, it can result in bad things. So
Oh yeah.
I think I'm asking is like, what do you mean by that, or what does that mean to you? Because I think my conception or my interpretation of what you just said
Yeah.
is not right.
Yeah, I don't like using that term either because it's like
Right.
nobody knows what it really means. But
Right.
yeah, I guess to put it more into detail, it's kind of surrendering to. So that has nothing to do with like trying less or being
Right.
disciplined or
Right.
having a vision or being positive. Like you always need that, of course. Like the more you have a vision, the more you are, feeling better energetically. Like everything is going to be better. That's always the primary kind of focus. But when I say letting go, I had to kind of surrender to the situation and the path, and so to stop kind of like battling and resisting what was happening and put kind of
Ah.
to view things from a different perspective. So instead
Right.
of like viewing everything as devastating and over, to
Right.
kind of view it from the perspective of like, okay, I'm letting go. This is what's happening now. I'm still gonna have my vision and try and feel as good as possible to do things that I need to do.
Yeah.
But letting go in the sense of kind of like accepting the current situation and the current kind
Yeah.
of what has to be dealt with. Because
That makes sense. That
yeah,
makes sense more.
yeah,
You distilled that, and that this isn't the same example, but it's a similar concept of like when I was really sick, it was mental stuff, right? And the healing process didn't start until I let go in the sense of stopped blaming everything else and
yeah,
everything around me, right? And realizing it was me, and we had to accept reality, which was not what reality was in my head, right? If that makes
Yeah.
sense. It's a variation of what you're saying.
Yeah, the biggest thing, because I mean, you know, I'm very interested in the mental and psychological journey too, and that was a big part of
Talk a
my
lot
life
about
too.
that, bro.
And I mean, one big thing that I think is valuable to keep in mind that could be of help in times is to remember that, and I can dissect this too, but to kind of tell yourself and remember that everything is a story. Like your brain is telling you a story in the sense that you don't have to get too attached from it, right? That doesn't mean to like ignore the feel. Like you can't really escape the feelings in the body, right? I mean, you're human. You're gonna have emotions and react, but like reminding yourself that it's a temporary story that your brain is telling you based on the current moment, the current amount of like how rested or tired you are. That can that's all. That's always of you know significant. That could be a good resource to kind of just or a tool to use.
And that mentality and that concept, translating it to the Web3 situation, right, is 2021, right? Like Maddie and I have had this struggle a lot, right? Guess what? Maddie and I are still here now. Have been doing our podcast and creating content for years. But you're temporary when you're in a height like that. Your temporary mind is telling you, well, everyone's successful except for you. But we know how true success happens, which is continuing to learn to grow over a long period of time, right? And that's an example of exactly what you just said. No, it's brilliant. This is a beautiful conversation. Maddie,
that reminded me too, man.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Maddie, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that was actually one big aspect too when it came to that moment of letting go. It was kind of like related to what you were just saying. It was detaching from any kind of comparison to everybody else.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And just coming back to like, oh, this is like my own journey. I don't have to suffer by thinking about anything external. And those, like, those, you know, there's a bunch of those types of ideas, but that's the type of stuff that set you free and give you much more power and energy. You know, a lot of those things can clutter you down so much. And it's still, I mean, I still have all of those triggers, but at least like I have the awareness of knowing like what you know, the reality is. And it's much easier to come back to that.
Yeah. And the messed up part about it, man, is it's just so hard for a human to think that way. But now you have billion-dollar corporations and the smartest people in the world to make you even feel worse if you don't think away, right? Maddie, what are your thoughts?
Well, a lot was shared right there. You know,
but I could tell that you wanted to add in some stuff, so feel free to add in anywhere.
To rewind in terms of, you know, these moments of clarity, I agree with you, Mike. I do think that there comes a point where people have to understand and take personal responsibility.
Yeah.
We're born into a world where things are already happening around us and there's already external influences. And it's very easy to just say, well, these are my circumstances. It's very hard to put your feet down and say, no, I can go any direction I want to if I put my mind to it. But you have to understand what that will mean. And, you know, if you're floating downstream, even dead fish can do that, right? Putting your feet down and stopping means you're going to feel pressure and there's going to be turbulence, right? And I think a lot of people don't like that, and it's a difficult thing to do. It's really hard to start actually fighting that current and go upstream. So I think there has to be a moment where it's like, wait a second, I have to stop thinking about why I'm going downstream and start thinking about where I want to go and what does that mean for me. And that personal, when you realize it's up to you, man, that's a big epiphany for a lot of people. And,
game changer, man.
To your point, Drasko, I think it's one you have to make consistently, right? If it was, I wish it was easy. It's like, nope, now I got it. You know, it's like you have to. Every step has to be made with effort once you stop going with the current, and it's a constant fight. But it can become your new norm, which is really, really important.
Right.
So that's kind of how I think there's a lot of really great things to be said here when it comes to that kind of stuff. These are the things people are struggling with, by the way. I think we're
100%.
We're in a day and age where, to your point, Mike, trillions of dollars are being spent to determine where that current is going, right?
Yeah.
The marketing dollars want us to flow a certain way downstream, right? And it's like, you have to have this house, this car, this type of occupation, this status, whatever it was, this many kids, this whatever, pick all the things that like the world kind of puts us in boxes for. It's very difficult to break out of that. And it's getting more and more difficult as time goes by, because it's just so easy. There's so many inputs for programming that are there. Right. And so I think taking a step out, which is, I think, the culture of Web3 in general, and what was really there was just kind of this counterculture rebellion to this centralized concept, and saying like, wait a second, if we can kind of break out of the matrix, so to speak,
right?
Gosh, what would we even do? What would happen if somebody wasn't telling us what to think? And so I think that brought a lot of people together in this space. We just have to be careful not to let this space become like its own current of its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
and
how do we keep that free?
I want to expand on one thing. I love your thoughts on what Matt said to Drasko, but the one thing that you said that was really interesting that I don't think people talk about enough too is people talk about these aha moments and self-realization, and you got to be held accountable. But then you followed that up by, you need to continue to do that as you continue to go forward. I think people don't talk about it a lot. They're like, oh, I've figured out life because I had those moments and now everything's hunky-dory. And it's like, the real reality is it never stops until you're literally underground. It just never stops. And that's the hard part about it, right? Drasko, any thoughts on everything we've just talked about?
I mean that was a great summary of what Matt just said, and even what you just pointed out is it's good to kind of mention that aspect too. That it's like it's hard. Like sometimes you talk about all these solutions and systems and mechanics, and it comes across as like a simple, easy thing. And when people feel in that deep difficulty, it's like they almost kind of don't even want to consider it. But that is, that's a good thing to kind of to highlight too, that it's like, it's difficult. It's like you have to, remembering that it's supposed to be difficult can also help in that process, right?
Right.
And it doesn't make you feel as like weak or different or whatever. It's like it's fucking difficult.
Yeah. And I just the concept of, and Maddie and I talk about this a lot, right? It is like my young mature self always had the concept of like, enough money, I get X, then there's an ending, right? But the concept of getting comfortable with, there's just never an end. Because if you have a mentality of like, there is a true end, you're going to end up pretty unhappy in my mind. And that's tough for a lot of people to swallow, especially to Matt's point, that are sucking up the trillions of dollars of marketing dollars, and you're literally distracting yourself with these things that don't matter, right? And it's very difficult.
Well, and life presents this, like, it's oversimplified to say the only struggle is earning more money,
right?
Steve Jobs earned a lot of money, right? But you know what we found out? Money doesn't solve cancer, right? And so like life finds a way to present problems you can't solve with traditional means, to force you to evolve as a person, to still grow and continue to move forward, right? And I think that is a very interesting concept that, whether it be health, whether it be wealth, whether it be, mental struggles or things like that, I think like we're going to have a current fighting that we're going to be fighting against forever. I think that's a way to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So
dude, I'm loving this, man. I wasn't ready. This is like,
we're going.
This is a TED Talk right now.
I told you we're going hard tonight.
This is good.
Drasko.
This is good.
So let's do this. Anything you want to shed light on? We got through the parasite. We're in our early 30s. Anything to reflect on being very sick and coming out of it? If you want to, great. If not, let's do another chunk of let's say the next part of your career evolution, and then we can hop to Web3, what you're doing now in the future. How does that sound?
Yeah,
Real
sure,
quick,
man.
All right.
real quick pause though. I have to know. Parasites, that's kind of a phobia of mine, and by kind of, it really is a
Mine too.
phobia. I just need to know, what do I need to not do, because I would prefer not to be in that situation. And is this because it took you 6 years to find the solution and then it was quick, or like the solution was 6 years? Because it's a little dicey.
Yeah, well, I guess the first answer is like a lot of people get parasites and you know they get cleared up by antibiotics and other things,
Yeah.
but the issue with me was that I didn't realize it in time, and I had them for like 6 months. And I also had like a bad bacteria at the same time that I picked up.
So just too many things at once.
So a
to
lot of
overcome.
things happened that like really
Got it.
damaged my system, and then it took me like, you know, the healthcare in Canada is like, you know, we praise it here all the time because it's free, but it's like you have to wait literally 6 months to see a specialist. And then you
Right.
see a specialist for like an hour that doesn't even care about you, right? They don't even look at you in the eye. So it took me, I mean, it's a crazy story, man, but it took me a super interesting story for next time. But it took me like probably, I think like around 3 years to find a guy who started helping me.
Wow.
And then it took like another, you know, 3 to 4 to like, I mean, it was another 2 years of like feeling really weak and bad. And then it started like, when I got to LA, it was like the first year where I started getting better a little
Got
bit.
it.
But
Okay.
Did
I mean,
you know where it
the
came from though?
regular
It was
things.
like food, water, what, like, do you know?
I don't know.
You have
It
no
must
clue.
have been yeah, it could be anything, honestly. It could
Right.
have been like just the regular, you know,
Right.
could have been like a salad, water, could like those
Right.
typical things.
Right.
Could have been
Right.
any of
Right.
that. I
Yeah.
don't know what it was.
Yeah.
It's just a bad combination
Shit,
of
man.
a lot of things.
Could
Oh,
have
but
gone
what was your?
without hearing that before I go to Italy for a couple months. But
Oh, you're
you know.
good in Italy, man. You're good.
Okay,
Just
good.
like take some probiotics with you and like
All right.
oregano oil. You'll be good.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Oregano
I will do
oil.
that.
You hear that? Shoot some oregano oil, B12 for that recovery, and some probiotics, bro. You'll be
Yeah.
tight. And make sure to
Yeah.
take
All
those
right, there we
vitamins.
go. You know that. You know that. All right,
Okay,
good to go.
so
I'm good. I just
we're
needed to get that off.
we're parasite free, man. The mind is shifting. Tell us about that. Tell us what you're doing next on that next leg of the journey. Really, I would say from there to when we met, which is like
Yeah.
2021 Web3 time, and then we'll
Yeah.
go into the Web3 world. So anything influences there, love to hear.
Yeah, man. Well, so the next chunk was kind of like the last, you know, 10 years in LA. So that was kind of like more expanding and growing in terms of like, you know, creatively what I do, trying to grow the business, making a lot of like shifts and changes there again, because, you know, the business is an extension of me or me in a way. So that also wasn't very specific, right? I was never just a web development company or just a music producer. I was always trying to do this kind of like unique. Again, it's like there's a lot of positives and negatives with that. It's like the positive is that you're known as that like creative person or business that's going to do something unique and weird, but at the same time it's like that's not, you know, something that everybody's looking for, right? So so essentially, yeah, I did a lot of music. Like when I got to LA is when I started doing a bunch of the first few years I did a bunch of like these music and sound libraries that are being licensed for all these like trailers and Hollywood film campaigns. So did a lot of like music and sound design for interactive advertising projects and brands. And then in between also did a bunch of like these complete kind of creative strategies and developing like whether it's like products or websites as a business for, you know, various types of, again, companies and brands too. And there was a lot of these like interesting weird types of projects in there. And then that came to the point of I think just around the time where like I jumped into the Web3 space, maybe like 3 years ago, it was great timing where a lot of these things came into place of like what I wanted to do and how to do it. And it was the perfect new kind of like a layer of technology that allowed for a lot of these ideas to create a connection with people and communities and fans and even brands if going in that direction. So that was kind of like the general highlight of that period. Like 3 years
Right.
ago was when I jumped into the space, and in general, like even, you know, unrelated to Web3 specifically, it was a shift for me to go from kind of client work to just building my own
Right.
ideas and products. And when I say my own, it's of course like working with great people, but it's not, a service-based company that I might still do that, here and there, but in general, it's kind of like the next phase now that started is like me building my own platforms and initiatives and projects, whether it's like more artistic stuff like the clock tower or like, more business related, tech platforms or whatever kind of solutions.
Love it. And so is it the same, talking about business insight, are we still talking about the same company that you started when you were 21 and it's just gone through a lot of evolutions?
Yeah.
And you still have that today?
Yeah, that's Drastic Studios pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
So putting the business lens on, entrepreneurship lens on, love to talk about maybe let's start with learning lessons, because we do, like we've said before, we're definitely more on the story. We like to produce content about success principles, helping people, again, all of this is self-realization. You kind of got to go through it, but it's cool to hear maybe a music guy might listen to your advice and be like, I can relate to Drasko-V because he has a similar vibe than I do. So when specifically talking about creating a company, gone through many evolutions, 2 to 3 skill sets that you think are critically important to get to where you have been today.
Yeah, oh man, there's so many lessons. I mean, I can't stop learning lessons, unfortunately, but or fortunately, I should say. Yeah, one thing is I mean, there could be so many, man. It really depends on the personality and the type of thing that people are doing. But I would say critical skill sets, I guess, the more, as with everything else in life, man, the more you remove your ego, the better off you're gonna be. So in relation to business, it's, being open for advice and being open to listen to feedback and any kind of negative feedback, especially, right, that you get from people.
Right.
And instead of kind of finding ways to defend yourself to feel better, like take that and do something with it to improve, the whole situation, whatever it is. So I would say like being very open to that. I would say also a lot of people have the scarcity mentality. A lot of people are afraid to share, to give in general, right? Especially, our culture is teaching us just to constantly like, it's a battle of individuals to get as much as you can for yourself, but it really has the opposite effect, man. Not that I was ever like that, but I realized that the more I involved people and the more giving I was, the better off everything was, man. It's like it's a fact, it's a law. I swear, like it's a law. So I would say have the mentality of I don't exactly know how to phrase it in like a few words, but having that mentality of like being open and inviting, collaborative and
sharing of ideas, man. Did you have a third one? I think you said 3, but if not, it's all right.
Yeah, well, Maddie, you were gonna say something.
Oh, I was just saying you reap what you sow. That you totally, get out what you put in, and so I think a lot of people, for sure, it's counterintuitive. I'm going to hold the cards close, but actually giving them away is what gets you more.
Right.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's amazing. It's like, unfortunately, I think a lot of people can't really believe and realize that until they see the effects of it. But it's like, once you learn, and then it's kind of amazing to see that there's some kind of like, there's something that makes shit work like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the third one, what would the third one be? I mean, ego kind of encapsulates a lot of like smaller ones, there are subcategories of that. But
I thought you had 3. If you don't, it's totally fine.
Third one would probably be like, and this is the cliche thing that everybody says, but it's also kind of like a law. It's like, don't be afraid to, if you're lucky enough to have some kind of a unique perspective or a unique way of doing things, or just like a specific thing that stands out, it's like, man, that's a blessing. So it's like that, definitely capitalize on that instead of trying to fit into a box and do what is expected and what others are telling you. So finding, I guess in more businessy terms, they talk about like, being a monopoly in the sense of like having like your own thing that like you don't compete with anybody, right? Like find a way to not compete with anybody. That's the real key. Like for me, for example, it was, I mean, I don't know if this is a perfect example, but like I was saying with, you know, getting into the music industry, I didn't even have the experience of like going into music studios or that traditional route, or even recording bands or none of that. Like I immediately jumped into like, how can I be weird and different with this, like, you know, connecting music to this digital tech world, right? With like
Right.
microsites and that type of thing. And now it's like, I mean, so much shit is happening now that it's way easier to do that because there's so many industries and types of ways of doing that. So I would say those. I mean, those three things come to mind right now,
Nah,
but
dude.
I'm sure there's more valuable ones.
Beautiful. Another way to say that last point is the whole, in business terms, it's the blue ocean, red ocean concept, right? Like, why swim in a red ocean of, you know, the top people that are already doing what you think you should do when you can combine skill sets and create an ocean that doesn't even exist, which is interesting. And to your point, what's where magical things happen is you find that undiscovered territory, but it's also relates to your skill set and something that you feel like you're passionate about and good at, right? And that's hard. And I think honestly the only way you can really get there, and this was hard for me to find because, you know, I went to design school. I've been like kind of creative, definitely more corporate creative. Like I'm not this crazy rogue creative like you and do all this cool ass shit. But it's just continuing to try, like never not trying new things, right? Because people, there's always this concept of like, oh, this person just knew they were meant to do this, or they're just naturally good at it. And it's like, no, most, 99% of the people tried 4,000 things, found one that they were good at, and then doubled down on that. But like, there's a lot of work to get to that one thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's a hard
100%.
concept for people to understand.
Yeah, man, I think one big point on that is that I truly believe, at least when I look at my life, is people are so zoomed in on these systems of like just the business aspect and just the money making aspect or creative aspect, and they kind of detach themselves as a person from that. But the thing that's going to lead you to figuring out what it is and what feels good is like is yourself, right? Discovering yourself, like how your brain works, who you are, like life situations and experiences. Like that's directly, for me, it was a direct connection between me kind of like I said, everything from like learning more about my brain, myself, becoming freer, realizing like more about ideas and how I think, that directly connected to being more in tune with what I want to do and how I want to do it and how I work. So I think that's one thing that rarely anybody discusses, right? It's always about like a system for how to like grow your business, or how to even with creativity, it's always some kind of a system that's just about that. But without you knowing yourself in a deeper way, it's like that's like you're directly limited. It's like if it's like that's everything starts here, man, so the more you open this up, the more everything else is gonna like make sense and open up. So that's directly relating to like what you said, like the trying and the doing is definitely there, but that has to be in parallel with you
100%
kind of working on yourself.
And in the prime example that I actually like to use a lot in a bitch, because I'm still actually corporate America environment, which I think is just a soul-sucking structure. But to use corporate America as an example of what you were saying is when you get the self-awareness to change a conversation with a leader or a manager to say, here's how I think my passions and skill sets fits within the company, opposed to give me the check boxes so I can move that one rung up to make more money, because that's what the leader is going to tell you, right? You hear always these these sayings of like, your job is to work yourself out of a job. Well, it's like, no, like if I really am good at doing strategy and I know I don't want to manage people, and I know I am interested in this area, let me explore that area more and then become more of an expert within that area and pay me more that way, right? But we've got these systems set up as like that you must do X, Y, and Z because that's the way it always has been. Same way, that's like a tangible example of what you were saying. Maddie, any thoughts?
Yeah. I'm big with analogies, and here's the thing: if you don't think about breathing until you don't have air, right? And then when you don't have enough air, that's all you can do is think about how bad you need air, right? And I think what happens is that we spend so much of our time right at the maximum capacity of what we can do, what we can afford, how much time we have, you know what I mean? And we're constantly in this moment of like panic. You know what I mean? It's like that when you're out in water and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to make it to shore or not, kind of thing. And so of course that's all you can think about. But if you can just take a second and, whether it be living below your means a little bit, or whether it be like, to your point, when you're surrounded by screens all day, getting some peace and quiet, it's amazing when you just have the space, your brain, your mind, and your creativity will flow. But we make it hard to do that because of the circumstances we put ourselves in. It's like we're constantly keeping ourselves deprived of air. So of course it's the only thing we can think of. But when you free yourself of that, you're free to think about the things like you're designed to do. Anyway, so that's a little bit deeper, but it really does kind of make me think about that.
Yeah. Like the last thing you said is a huge point, man. Like giving yourself space to think. It's like that's it sounds like a simple thing because people are lost and people are it's like there's a difference between giving yourself space to think and just like silence. There's a difference between that and having a cluttered mind with constant thoughts and worries, right?
Exactly.
And that's huge, man, because that's when like things come together. It's like when you have some room for new things.
Well, and because it's like, listen, man, and take whatever number. It doesn't matter. If you make this much, but you spend this much, now when the job says, well, your job is to work yourself out of this job, you can be like, well, wait a second. I actually don't need to do that, right? I like what I'm doing now. But when you make this much and you spend this much, you have to take the promotion because you have to fill that delta, and it starts, your life becomes a series of reactions rather than choices. So that's a whole different topic. I do have I'm going to pivot here because I'm loving these rabbit holes, but here's my question. I think that's going to be unique for you, Drasko-V, is AI. AI is radically changing things at an incredibly fast pace. And one of the areas I think a lot of people are talking about it is the area of creativity. Think about writing, whether it be, even now AI generated art, things like this. It's taking over a lot of people who were creators. What's your take on that? Because you've always been involved with the tech side of it as well. And so AI could be a very powerful tool for you. I'm just curious to hear your take on how you see this integrating in this kind of digital creator world and the kind of the things you're doing. Is this something that's going to benefit you, that you're excited to use? Is this something that, keeps you up at night? What's your take?
Yeah, man. Well, I guess without, that's a whole podcast as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I
can't wait to go down that. Well, that'll be a separate podcast, but definitely we want your top thoughts.
Yeah, I'm just curious some of your thoughts because you're in a very unique position to talk about this.
I mean, one thing that definitely stands out is that like so I guess two key things. Like it really sucks that it is, putting people out of work, and not only out of work, but like a lot of these, crafts, right? Like people, artists that 3D artists that take time to craft beautiful things are valued much less now in a sense. Like even, that's definitely gonna evolve even more, right? Because as AI gets better, so and with music as well, right? So that's kind of, it's unfortunate. That's kind of sad, but I guess just looking at it from a non-emotional perspective, it's like this is kind of how I see it now. It's a new layer of technology that's coming, that's here, right? It's going to be a big part of our business systems and creative systems. So I think what's going to end up happening is that the level of how people think and innovate will have to raise, right? So people
Right.
who not
Exactly.
necessarily like acquiring a new skill set, but kind of seeing like this new layer of technology and coming up with now new ways of how you can apply that for yourself as a creative,
Agreed.
right? There's no other way, and that can be a positive thing. I mean, there is like, again, sad, unfortunate elements, but it's like you're not gonna forget about like resisting it and fighting it. Like this is like, I mean, it's done, right? So
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I, like on a very high level, I see it as a thing that you know, choose to look at it as like there's nothing else to do but to choose to look at this as a tool that can provide certain solutions and opportunities with however you work and think, and try to figure out ways of how to use it, right, to your benefit. And whether you're like an
100%.
artist or you know, whatever else, or a
Right.
business.
Right.
That's kind of
So-
how I viewed Web3. It was, oh, sorry, man.
No. Keep going. Keep going.
I was gonna say that's kind of how I viewed Web3. I kind of viewed it as a new layer, right? Like a new playing field, right? Where new things can be built on and presented, and you can involve and connect to people in on like this new field, right? And that is like an open thing. You can do anything. So that's, you know, not directly the same, but that's kind of how I'm perceiving it for now. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people are spending a lot of time on philosophies around it, and it's all valuable and fun, but it's like the main question is like, what are you going to do with this thing to make it a benefit, versus you kind of like, you know, not knowing what to do, because it's
Yeah, for sure. I think you said some interesting things there, because the idea of layers, right? I would say this: if one-dimensional creators are in trouble, debatably extinct at this point because of AI. Two-dimensional creatives are probably in trouble. But when you start getting to that multi-dimensional, and let me give you an example, right? Let's take cuisine, right? Okay, you can make food and it tastes good. Well, that's good. You got taste, but does it look good? Now we're on another dimension, right?
Yeah.
Are the textures balanced and the temperatures there? What am I going to feel when I eat this? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then do the flavors combine and make something bigger than the summation of each whole, right? The synergistic kind of concept, right? So when you think of these amazing chefs that make cuisine, they're not thinking one-dimensionally. They're thinking on multiple different wavelengths to make an amazing experience. And that's very difficult to analytically do, right?
Yeah.
There's an art to that. One of the things I think is interesting about you is this fusion of art for you and creative puts you in a different echelon just right off the bat. I mean, I told you our introduction of like, of every NFT or every picture, and then suddenly it's like, oh wait, there's sound. What do you mean? There's sound and an image, and wait, they're linked, and it's on purpose. You know what I mean? And so it's like that immediately added a whole nother level to what this experience was. And so I think it's going to be interesting, because I think what will have to happen is the only people left will be people who can think multidimensionally when it comes to these creatives to create experiences, because that's going to be very, very difficult for now, at least, right? Very difficult for the current based AI system to use, because it needs an input and it can only take that from one dimension at a time.
Yeah, totally, man. And that multi-dimensional thinking, that's a big gap between how AI works now, because that's pretty much a human brain, right? So it's like there's a lot of opportunity there for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
you got it.
Yeah, and
so I think that's going to be a big one.
And another tangible example of, and you might know the actual tech Drasko-V, but so I used to do, I don't remember if you remember me telling this, but I used to do all the TV production for Geico car insurance, like all their advertisement, right? And so I met a lot of like really cool Hollywood producers and film guys, and he was shooting, which I don't know if it's a series or a new movie. Who's the guy that wrote Game of Thrones? Why can't I think of his name?
George R. Martin.
Right. He's got a new movie or series coming out. He was shooting that, and he was talking about the tech that's going into the new cameras that in real time can project like pretty high fidelity final 3D art that used to take hours to create. It's in camera, in real time. I forget the name of the software or camera that's doing it, right? It's a drastic leap in technology. What I'm getting at is it's the same difference to the AI. These tasks that used to take months are now happening in minutes. So not only, yes, you're gonna need a master cook that is analytically thinking, but immediately by default, you get such a higher quality because your baseline has moved up so much higher, right? So now, because I agree with you that you might have to raise your height of analytical thinking, but what I'm getting at is that's just going to happen by default because the baseline is raised. So even if you're still analytically thinking with the new tools, what the output is going to be is already just going to be insane, right? Because to the analogy I just used, now instead of using green screen and a couple practical elements, and then taking 4 months to build out the 3D stuff, now that is day one already provided, and you use that extra time to make shit even cooler, right? And that output's going to be insane.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's there was a great interview with what's his name, the creator of Stable Diffusion, and he talks about some of these timelines and improvements in technology, and his prediction is that, which I mean, it's hard to kind of not believe because they're showing the progress as we go on every month, right? And he thinks that within like a year and a half, it's going to be like Hollywood level movies that you can do via text or via whatever kind of input. So it's like Michael Bay style visuals and everything. Yeah. So it's, I mean, that's why Hollywood was trying to get all the actors to sign off on their
terrified
images. Yeah.
They're terrified.
And they should be though, but they should be, right? And I mean, and I mean, that's a whole different, because you can get into like the economics and the disparities there. But the point is to your point, basically everyone you used to have to wait for credits to go by, that's going to get like a real short list real soon. And you know, credits are going to take a couple seconds, you know,
that's a good description.
In 2025. So
but at the same time, like you read and, you know, like, and this is different, but like still take the concept, right? The Industrial Revolution was going to happen, and the same concept there is like all jobs are going to go away, everything's going to take over. We're at this other inflection point. There will be a lot of jobs that go away, but there will be a lot of jobs that are created as well.
But
you know,
here's the thing. Here's why it's a beautiful thing. Hollywood has had shackles on creativity for decades.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
The idea that people still think you can just go with this amazing movie script and go to Paramount and like Paramount just makes that movie they're smoking something, right? Because it doesn't happen like that. They rip it up, make it their thing, put in all their other things. It's like how any bill gets through Congress these days. It's just like nothing is the original thing anymore, right? What's cool about this is when you talk about a computer AI, when text turning into a motion picture, now look at what YouTube has done with creators.
Yeah.
With podcasts. You know what I'm saying? People, some of the most amazing content are just people who started a YouTube channel 10 years ago, and now they're making some of the best television out there.
Yep.
But they would have never gotten a chance if they had to go through the Hollywood grind cycle to get there, right? And so I think the best is yet to come. I think that now we're actually creatives are going to be able to make movies, and we're going to find out very quickly, because it won't be about who had the $300 million to promote a crappy Indiana Jones movie. It's going to be who makes the best films, and we're going to find out. It's going to be right there, and it's going to be analytical with data. You know, here it is. This is what people wanted to see. And that's going to make people upset who had the traditional centralized power. But here we are again, circling back to why Web3 kind of tickled all of our fancies, which is like, wait, let's let that go, and let's let kind of the chips fall where they may.
Right.
We're going to get some great stuff.
Right.
Yeah, man. I agree.
Yeah. So let's do this. Such a good podcast. I love these, man. I knew it was going to be one of the top dogs. Let's get into Web3. I'm gonna give you the floor, as in you can go as much as you want into Rengoku Legends as you want. You can go into as little as it is you want. You can talk about your journey in Web3 from 2021 till now, the ups and downs. I'm gonna let you write your narrative there, and we'll just continue wherever you go.
Sure, man. I guess to kind of summarize, well, the journey in general was it was great in the sense that a lot of a lot of creating, a lot of building, a lot of learning, because we went from like that initial Web3 phase of just like everybody minting everything. That's like when we started our original concept of like wanting to do something different, right? So I'm pretty sure we were like the first ones who did like the interactive customization mint where people were able to personalize the NFT, and that was tied to music, and the
Right.
music was original. So right away we kind of wanted to showcase like another layer of providing some more personal and entertainment value for people, right? So that was the starting point. And there were a bunch of like directions and ideas that we wanted to take it in, which had to kind of evolve as the space evolved, of course. So yeah, a lot of to summarize a lot of the what's been happening with and the main name of the project is Kaidan. Rengoku Legends were like the original. That was kind of what we started with, and Kaidan is kind of the main name of the IP. And yeah, basically we just kept building out this universe, the Kaidan universe of like characters, of all of the artwork. Almost finished with like the first level of the video game, which I sent you to check out, which is being built in Unreal Engine. That's pretty much led by Connor and his partner Jack. They're more heads in to the video game side of things. So yeah, built out a pretty robust universe of amazing content. I have like 10 albums of music that now I gotta start figuring out how to put out and what to do with. And we have a lot of ideas. It's just a matter of like strategy of how to connect things. But yeah, built out. Yeah, so we're almost finished with the game demo, which is pretty exciting. We did the first version of it. It was a lot of things were being fixed now just to improve it. Yeah, a lot of the artwork, a lot of like music connected to it, and in between during that period, we also did. The cool thing was that we got to build and play with ideas and building technologies. So, for example, with any kind of NFT initiative that we did, we wanted to connect something to it. So one of the NFT initiatives that we're regularly doing is the novella series, just these mini novels that we have written by Steve Saville. He's a great writer. He did like Warhammer and a bunch of other big things as a writer. So when we do the novellas, for example, we still create the NFTs, which are like these 3D books that spin just as a collectible item. But each novella, each NFT, of course, has its rarity, but they all give you access to this interactive Kindle reader that we built.
That's
and the Kindle
cool.
reader is pretty much, it's not a Kindle reader. It's like Kindle.
Yeah.
But the reader basically follows the user as they read based on just what page they're on and what scene they're on. And we have a whole musical system where, depending on the scene that you're reading, that particular music layer is going to play. So if you're reading like a battle scene or whatever, then
the soundtrack for reading, I love it.
Yeah. So those types of things that we played a lot with. Now we're gonna hit the next. We had a lot of talks with continuous discussions with investors and VCs throughout this period, which were kind of like continuously. They take much longer, as you can imagine. The Web3 space, just like everybody crashed. People, it was much tougher to get funding, so yeah, it just took a little bit longer than we anticipated. But now we're entering this kind of next phase of finishing the demo, and now we're going to talk to some more VCs, more traditional publishers, and get into the next phase of like getting funding for the game and doing more things with the IP and moving forward with that.
Dude, great kind of overview. I'm interested to go kind of a little high level because we have had a lot of creators and founders in the Web3 space, and I would love to take it from the angle of being a founder and a creator in the Web3 space and using NFTs to create a project and mint out and sell out. And then you saw what the majority of the space was doing, which was just to create an NFT to make money, and they had empty promises. And what was your mindset in the beginning of this journey? Was it to create a company through the sales NFTs, or you always? What I remember is you always were going to create a game, and an NFT was an additive element to this universe. And what are your thoughts on just your thoughts of the landscape of Web3 then, what you see now, and talk us through those ideas and processes there. I'm interested.
Yeah, man, I think what you mentioned just now is that everybody started capitalizing on just like how to get money, right? And not a lot of people thought about like what does value mean for people, right? And value doesn't necessarily, everybody focused on value being the promise of people making more money, and they made their companies like these promises of financial incentives, right? Which was just a mistake. So I think that's what the result of this whole Web3 crash is, like, just not, and I think the transformation is probably going to be very positive, because now people are seeing they can't do that anymore, and the only way to get attention, to get an audience, is to provide something for them, whether it's value through entertainment, whether it's value through like some content that they can, buying a comic book, watching a movie, playing a game, right? Spending time in a way that feels fulfilling. Like those are things that provide value.
Right.
And I'm not saying there can't be like monetization in there, or you can have like a certain aspect of like an economy within the system. But I didn't see a lot of that. There wasn't a lot of projects that were built on anything deeper than just kind of like, just images. And again, not to like discredit anybody or like to insult anybody, but it's like it totally made sense to me why there was a lot of why there was this whole crash and a lot of projects that just died out. So, and I think for us the reason why we started this was, again, kind of like I mentioned, the whole idea of seeing Web3 as a new kind of playing field. Connor and I were excited as like creators and artists to put something out, right? And to like build a world. So I think from the start we had substantial value of something deeper in there. Like there was really a story, there was really content that was being created, things that were crafted like with precision on a high level in terms of art and music and like these technologies, right? I don't know if that was answering part of your question.
You nailed and answered that question. And I know I struggle with this, to like always try to be nice, but I do want to offend a large amount of those people that took advantage of people because they knew it was a way for them to make money, and this craze was happening. And what's cool is to hear people like you that when you, even in the height of this hype, right? Like, of course I got into it because I was like, oh, I can make some money. This is interesting to me. But Maddie and I always understood the underlying technology is going to be a massive thing. But you as a creator, and I think, what did you sell your mint out in like a couple minutes, maybe even less than a couple minutes?
Yeah, it was immediate. It was like 50 seconds or something.
Yes. So you saw the potential of like, holy shit, I can just keep on doing this and making money. But your intentions from the beginning were to use NFTs to add to this universe and thing that you were creating, which is like, bravo to you, man. Because you want to talk about taking the high road in a scenario where you could have, really screwed some people over with your talent and your ambitions, which a lot of people did. It's just bravo. Hats off to you. Matt, any thoughts?
Man.
Yeah, dude, I remember when you guys came on, I was like, this is going to be a guy that we continue to talk to. Maddie, any thoughts?
Yeah, man, I think that there's economies go through phases like this, and it's not the first time something's been hyped and wild. Listen, we always talk about it, right? The .com era, People were making anything.com they could, and it didn't make sense. Like, weird things. You're like, what the heck, And it was just anything to try to get to capitalize on and make money. Here's what I know. That group of people will always exist. There will always people who jump on whatever is trending to try to capitalize and make a dollar out of it. What is interesting is that it's created an environment now where anybody who gets in it for the right reasons is going to have significant hurdles to overcome. I can only hope that the people who will stay in the space are similar to what you're doing, Drasko-V, in the sense that, like, I'm in it here because I believe in this and I really see something amazing in what this tech can do. And if enough people do that, there will be a renaissance again of this, but it will be of the right people. And here's what will be cool. The barrier to entry will not be like it was before, where you could just come up with something and 20 seconds later, a few right tweets, and all of a sudden you had 100,000 people in your Discord. It's going to be like the duplicatable process is going to take time, and it would be like, planting a seed to harvest. There's just a window of time there. And if you're not a farmer, it's just not a good way to make fast money. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's a normal ebb and flow of these type of things. Although sometimes they go away forever, but I'd like to think that this is one of those things where, like, I think this is going to smolder for a little bit. And then we're going to start seeing some things start popping, because the truth is this: any business, it takes years to get things to really start getting traction anyway. You started a business, we're going to start seeing that now, because that window of time, we're starting to get to that point where we're going to start seeing some of these people who were talking about games quietly have games, right? And suddenly it's going to be, oh, wait, that thing we forgot about 3 years ago. It's like when James Cameron announced he's going to make a movie. You're like, well, all right, wait 7 years because then we'll actually see it. And so, that it'll be like that effect. And then I think that can maybe stir up some more passion for it. And I really hope that there's enough people doing it right and can stay the course to push it forward. Yeah. What do you think about that, guys?
Agreed, man. 100%.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Very well said. I'm actually interested in this, Drasko. From when you started dabbling in NFT technology and Web3 till now has been, it's been some time. How do you see the tech changing, or the concept of how you thought you were going to utilize NFTs and Web3 evolve, and what you are currently using it as today? Has there been many changes? Is it still kind of like, did the Web3 aspect of this content creation and world creation change in many ways, or is it still kind of the same concept as you envisioned it to be from day one?
Yeah, it's not much different, to be honest, because I always saw it as how do we describe this simply? I think again, going back to what we were saying with the issue, is a lot of people perceive that as an NFT is a thing you can sell. So let's just make something an NFT and sell it, right? And that's not how we perceived it. We looked at it as like, okay, what's the value of this technology, right? And then how do you integrate that into an idea, right? And that's gonna then have a mutual positive effect, right?
Right.
Correct.
So so it's kind of, I think it's still the same. It's like the technology is evolving in the sense that there is, more, it's becoming better in the sense of like, security aspects, or there's more blockchains and more kind of options for what creators can use and what companies can use and how things can function, and like, what an NFT can mean in relation to like a specific blockchain. But
right.
in the general sense of like value and how to integrate it, it's still the same. It's like, okay, like, is there a reason for me using an NFT in a project or in a concept, right? Otherwise, you're just using this thing because, it's like you want to sell it. So, so I think that's the same. It's like if your overall idea is good, if you're providing value, and then you find a method and a reason to use an NFT, that's like the right way to do it. And I don't think that changed.
Right. No, absolutely.
Well, and we're in an environment where, again, I go back to like, we're free enough that the winners will always rise, right? And you can't. Let me give you an example. Like, it's true open creativity. Kind of going back to what I was saying, what YouTube did for content creators. When everyone can be a content creator, then you quickly find out who makes good content and who doesn't. And you can't blame it on, well, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, because you either have or you didn't. And I think what'll be cool is, you know, you said people looked at NFTs as a way to like, I can sell something, right, and make money. And that would, you know, that's like, okay, I can make a video game, right? But if nobody buys it, then objectively we can say it probably wasn't very fun to play. And if you're thinking about how do I sell a bunch of video games rather than how do I make a fun video game for people to play, you're putting the cart before the horse, right? And this is forcing people to say, I need to make a good game that people want to play and has replay value or all the other metrics that make a game successful. If I focus on that, then the money it becomes a byproduct of the success.
Right.
Which is how
100%.
most business is supposed to run. And I think that this is environment is forcing that. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I would say, so kind of along these same lines, and I'm interested to hear what you say. Again, being a Web3 founder and understanding the NFT ecosystem, where it was now, advice to the young entrepreneur. And I'm not talking about the concept of like, yeah, we know the PFP era is dead. That's probably not ever going to come back. I'm talking about what would your advice, now that you've dabbled in this space, tried to create an ecosystem, young entrepreneur understands they want to build a business and use some NFT Web3 technology. Any advice, any learning lessons, pain points, things that you would like to talk about? You know, a couple things that you always hear is like, oh, community is key. Well, community isn't key when it's dead like it is now, right? So like, what are more aspects than just the cliche things that I think you hear is what I'm getting at? Like, from your perspective, would love to hear any of your thoughts.
Yeah, man, I think, well, I guess the foundation of all of that is I mean, this is an overused cliche word, which you didn't want to hear, but find a way to give value to whatever audience you're trying to build, right? Find a way, like, what does value mean for your idea and your business, and find a way to like give that and try to give as much of that without asking for much in return, first of all, right? So I think the key is like to have something that, you know, a lot of people try to build ideas and systems around the idea, you know, based on kind of the concept of like with focus on how something can be sold and how money can be made, and not focused on like what the actual core substance of the idea is and what the value is for somebody, right? So I think this applies to anything. It's not just Web3. It's like any kind of business or product you're trying to build. You want to have something of value that people are going to benefit from, whatever type of audience you have, whether it's like entertainment or technology or whatever service you're offering. So, you know, create the best possible like product that you're building that's really, really good, and then start giving that away as much as possible to build attention and to build engagement and to have people like use it and like it, right? Because attention and an audience is like the main thing you need to eventually make money. So I think those are like the key steps of like create some substantial, genuine value on whatever level you can, you know, bring and then try to attract an audience in a very authentic way where you're not trying to capitalize on them necessarily. It's like, it's okay to, you know, that has nothing to do necessarily with making money. Like, hopefully you make a ton of money, right? Everybody wants that, but it's like, find a way to do that in proportion with what you're giving, right? And what you're offering. So I would say, focus on, I know it's a vague high level answer, but it's like, there is no other, you know, digging into any other aspect would be focusing on like a particular business or a particular technology. So I would say, find a way to like get attention by giving that value and giving your product to certain audiences, and you're going to build that audience base because people will keep using it or keep using your service. They're going to tell others, and that's how you build something, right?
100%. I think that is the right answer, and I think it needs to be high level like that. And I think more people just need to hear that and somehow get through all this, because even now, when, you know, Ethereum is well over half at what it was when you were minting, and you know, Twitter is a quarter of the amount of chatter that was going on there. The chatter is still there if you like search Web3 or NFT, and it's still all the wrong chatter, which is crazy to me. After people being burnt to the tune of billions of dollars, not like a million. I mean, we're talking hundreds of millions, billions of dollars that scammed and lost and just rugged. But the same chatter is still there. So even though this sounds really simple, we still got to keep on saying it. And that's why we're here. And that's why we like what we do, is because we, people need to hear the real truth.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that, though. So applying that principle, because you have a little more of an established, I mean, you've had a business since you were essentially 21 years old, and then you moved into this space. You had tremendous, I mean, your first mint was in, like you said, 15 seconds. But if somebody was trying to do this now, what is applying that principle, which you just said, value, what does that look like now? Right? Because it can't be the method of 2021 where I can have an idea and 2 months later I have 300,000 people, right?
Yeah.
What does that look like now? What does the slow burn build of a Web3 company look like, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I would I would take the opposite approach of what everybody was doing. So I would, if your plan is to do an NFT mint, either do a free mint that's going to have immediate value and some type of engagement or a product that you're building or your service, or create and build something that people can start engaging in and seeing the value of like their, how they use their time or what they're paying for, and then lead up to a mint that's going to provide some kind of value there, right? So I would do literally the opposite of what there's no other way. Otherwise, it's like, even with an established, like we wouldn't dare do a mint now, regardless of how much value it's like, there would be, unless it's highly tied into something that's already functional, like a game that's fully built or whatever else, kind of interactive story world, anything, right? So it's like, you would have, I think the only way would be to like build an audience through something that you already have built, that they can be a part of, and then lead up towards, something where they're going to have that kind of additional value if they pay, a very reasonable amount. It's just both like the market and the world we're in, and people are much more susceptible now to analyzing what means what and what's gonna, if what they want to put money into, especially after everything that happened.
I love that answer, man. More people need to hear that. With that being said, though, that my assumption would be now again, ETH. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a little while. The last time it was around $1,800.
Don't look at it, man. Don't look today.
Where is it at now?
Well, the market crashed today. It was like, I think Tesla cashed out.
1680. There have been worse. There's been worse days.
That's still. So let's say
we're not back down to that 1290.
Whatever, man. It's not going to be. We know the future is not looking good for a little while. What I'm getting at is, we know what the right answer is, but if ETH triples and the markets start picking back up again, do we see the state of 2021 ever coming back? Or do you think enough people are smart enough to snuff that out? There's a big enough voice of people like us that have been around to say this is all bullshit? Or is there going to be enough new blood to make new money and the whole same cycle is going to happen? What is your thoughts there?
Yeah, man, I'm not sure about the whole same cycle. I think that, like whenever there's more liquidity and more money, the more people get back into these like luxuries, they're going to start buying more whatever, watches and like NFTs. So I think that will pick up again, just because there's going to be more money flowing around, and like money wants to move and people want to spend money. I think that I would expect and hope for the new cycle to look like, it's going to be really interesting to see, man, because it would be mind-blowing if we see the same thing again in terms of like shitty projects just making money. So I think like I'm hoping and imagining the next cycle, just based on like, I guess logic and common sense. I would imagine that when there is an opportunity, when there is more liquidity and interest, that now we're going to have more, that we're going to have better projects and better types of things that people are going to be able to like participate in, and hopefully there's some kind of an evolution in NFT world of what that means, right? I think music is going to be a really big part of it. That's like a big thing that I'm interested in, just in terms of I think the biggest thing really is going to be in interaction and participation, right? Like people connecting, right? People connecting in a way that feel like that's why the whole Web3, like Maddie, you were saying, it's like the cool thing with Web3 with that whole community aspect was like there was a new community, right? There was a new thing that people got to connect over. So just on a smaller scale, I think that I would imagine that the new projects that start coming to life in the next kind of, I guess, bull market or the next period where things are better, I would imagine that those projects would be ones to create this higher level of connection between people and how they connect and how they feel together, and interactivity and engagement, right? So people being able to do stuff, right? To do something, to feel a part of this project, whether it's like, in the music world, it would mean remixing and creating tracks with others, right? And that looking and feeling like something cool and resulting in an NFT instead of just buying a music NFT, right? So I mean, I it's hard to say really because everything is so crazy, but I would imagine like more just based on regular like economics and logic, more money will equal more activity in the space. It was great for artists. I think a lot of artists are going to come in if there's like, more and better platforms that are offering more interesting things for artists. And then we'll see what happens with projects. I mean, that's an unknown, but that's the thing. It's like NFTs provide a great opportunity for people to connect in a new type of way, or the Web3 in general, right? It's a new method for connecting and a new way for creating together that can be kind of like captured, where before you couldn't really capture it, right?
We're seeing. Go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was gonna say what we're seeing. Look at the Starbucks NFT, man, is like really showcasing that.
100%.
It wasn't about. It's not even about a money mint, or it has nothing to do with that. It's just complete. We know we have diehard fans, and they turned it into this like really engaging loyalty program that's thriving. You know what I mean? And people who would never be interested in it are interested in it because they're just Starbucks junkies, and they're interested because it's like a cool way to show their devotion to this company they love and participate in. And I think that kind of stuff, if some of these larger entities who have these like almost fanatical fan bases, could do stuff like that, like a Chick-fil-A or something like that, where it's like people just love that brand or something, then that would be a big kind of resurgence that would be able to be possible. So that, and music and games and things like that, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And we had somebody in chat say, I think NFTs will end up being like buying stock in a company. And I actually disagree with that. I agree with you, Drasko. I think the Kickstarter model of NFTs, which 2021 was, right? I don't think that will ever really come back. There might be in a bull run, like you said, a subset of people that make shitty art and make money. But I see the NFT technology going towards the loyalty programs. People like yourself actually create a game where the NFT technology can be additive to the game experience and help ownership. And there might be economies based around that, right? We might get to that point, opposed to spending money on a skin to give to a big developer, right? You get that ownership, and that sense of ownership, how you use that NFT to create new forms of ownership and integrate communities is where I see the future is. I do not see NFTs as a pure financial tool. And we had this conversation with these guys. They're really cool. Should link you guys up. They're creating a distillery using NFT as a layer, but they're creating a distillery, right? But their whole point is it's additive. In the problem with the industry that they saw and why it's crashed, in addition to obviously the markets, is everyone was putting so much pressure on the fact that NFTs was a financial solution, but it's not. NFT and Web3 is a creative community access. Like there's all of these really cool ways that we could be utilizing it, and all of the spotlight was on making money, and it's a financial solution. It was the wrong solution. So, does that make sense?
You know, I tell you, do you guys remember? Geez, Mikey, this would have been when we were in college, maybe. So like early 2000-ish. You remember how all the bands that we were all into all had online fan clubs you could join? Like you could if we love the Deftones, and if you pay like, I don't even know, $100 or something, you could join their fan club and get like the exclusive email and blah blah blah. Fan clubs, like it was like this thing where they used to, even before that, they didn't buy mail.
I mean, they still have them. Pearl Jam has their 10 club. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
But my point there is like this concept. I mean, to your point, Mike, NFTs was made for that. You know what I mean? If you really wanted to create a loyalty fan club program, if you're a celebrity, you know, if you're Taylor Swift, you know, and they have all the, what are they, Swifties? Is that what they're called?
Right.
You know what I mean? Imagine if she launched an NFT and everyone who was there got access to her new album a month before everybody else, guaranteed, just was going to happen. Got guaranteed first dibs on tickets to concerts or all that kind of crap, right? If all that was there, dude, that it would be a hit. But if it was going back to what you said, you know, in terms of delivering value to your audience, right, Drasko-V? I mean, that was what you said. Like, if that audience, that is what's valuable to them, is access to Taylor Swift. If that's what it provides, it will thrive, right? Yeah. But if it's just, hey, join this club, and by the way, you're not going to get anything. I mean, you know, it's just, at the end of the day, NFTs have to start providing value before anything can change. Yeah. And the ones that do that will slowly emerge us out of this. That's my thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Dude, great, fantastic conversation. I mean, dude, we've been talking for 2 hours and it seems like 10 minutes, but the time has flown by, and I do want to be cognizant of time. Like I said, I am 2 days away from a baby, so I'm sure my wife is going to continue to ask when I'm done. But I do not want to do you a disservice in the fact that, Drasko-V, you've been making some incredible stuff. I want to talk about where you're at right now and what, let's say, the next year holds. And then after you do that, I'd love to kind of capstone that with, I'm actually able to share my screen and show some of the videos that you sent. So if there are any videos that you sent over that might be cool to show on stream for people to get a sense of the things that you're building, we can totally do that as to kind of close it out. How does that sound?
Sure, man.
Awesome.
Go for it.
Love it.
So let's before we do that though, give us the next year, man. Like where are you at now with Kaidan, and what does it look like in the next year? What are you concentrating on?
Yeah, I think now is like the pivotal point of we're really excited because a lot of the building and creating came to this point of again, like the game demo is almost finished, so you know, getting that funded and being able to kind of both build the game out and start putting out all the IP related stuff in the world, from like our, you know, interactive stories to the art to properly kind of getting the, you know, getting products out there really, because we, you know, right now it's just kind of keeping our community engaged and providing value for them. But the next step is going to be a more kind of like global type push in terms of like really getting the stuff out there. So it's going to be, yeah, it's pretty exciting to finally, you know, get to that point, or at least take that next step or get to that next phase. So yeah, there's still going to be a lot of work happening and a lot of creating, but it will be kind of the next phase of that, right? So yeah, more products coming out and getting the game in an official kind of timeline of like when and how long it's going to take to build, and progressing with that. And finally introducing some more concrete music related stuff. So that's what I've been strategizing on these days, just like how to, how and where to start putting stuff out, both in terms of like what the music products will look like, and then how to be smart to, because, you know, a lot of the music content that's being created, like I'm always keeping in mind, like, what is this going to mean when and if this can be used in an NFT, or like what is this going to mean if this piece of music can be used for like remixing or building other things. If we create some kind of, what is it going to mean if it's like a vinyl or connected to something? So there's a lot of like points to connect always, but it's, yeah, the fun part is that now we'll get to that next phase of doing more of that. So yeah, just a lot planned in that pipeline with Kaidan stuff.
Love it.
Chat, have any questions before we kind of kick it over to looking at the actual game development? Maddie, anything to add to what Drasko just said?
No, man. I think what you have been building to this point, and now, you know, you were talking about how we all struggle with anxiety, right? Now it's time to kind of deliver, right? And that's an exciting phase. And I think that what's really cool is you've done a great job of holding your audience with you, getting to this point, which is, by the way, really hard to do, especially when everybody was used to everything instantly. And you know, we were able to see that even dating back to how you guys built the community in the first place. So I think that that's been really cool, how you've been engaging them along the way to get to this point and building that energy. So it'll be cool.
Right.
Thanks, man. Honestly, our fans, I mean, it feels like we should be, I mean, we're really grateful to them because everybody was so, you know, everybody that's still kind of involved and participating, they're genuinely kind of supportive of the project. They really love like the whole idea and what we're doing. So it's been, you know, of course, like we always have pressure and the need to do things, but it was more out of like, you know, you want to reward somebody and do whatever you can. And there is a lot of like pressure there because the people like really deserve it when they're genuinely kind of interested and supportive rather than kind of like demanding in a negative way. So it's even more pressure because we care. But that's a great thing. I think it's just pushing us to do everything at the highest, you know, the highest level possible, which we do. Cool. I mean, every little piece of content we create, it's like, it's you know, it's high, whether it's like static high level art to having like an animated little piece that has like, you know, Japanese narration and high quality music and sound design to whatever. It's like we really put a lot of effort into every little thing that we do to kind of, you know, because everything comes together to create this whole energy of what the IP is. So it's nice to see it appreciated.
Yeah. And so let's get to that IP. So I'm gonna we're going to show a lot of the artwork in the videos on the stream. Our videos are going to get cut off. The question is, and I don't know if you have the Drive link up that you shared with me. I don't know where, I mean, you have tons of stuff. We obviously can't go through it all. But what are some good places to start, or a couple handful of videos that we can play so people can actually see this life, world coming to life?
Yeah, sure, man. Let me look at this real quick.
Yeah, so we got the Kaidan content. We have some games stuff. We have Lore Masters, NFT.
I can tell you what's what, and then you can decide what might be most interesting to you. So, so I sent you two links. One link is like the YouTube link to Connor going through the first version of the game demo. So if you want, you can literally like open up YouTube and then just like scroll through it and see a couple of, you know, clips of what that looks and feels like.
Yes.
And then the in G Drive, the game stuff is just a few raw examples from like Unreal Engine showing like sound design creation for specific like movements that might be like more boring for people. I'm just opening it now to see what else.
That's the spider. Where's the YouTube? Did you text the YouTube link to me, or did you put that in Twitter too?
It's in the doc. It's in the document. It's the second.
Oh,
link.
It's in the doc.
I can paste it for you here.
Actual document.
I just sent it to you on in Discord.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's watch that first, and then we can just show a couple elements.
Sure, man.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Discord's gonna pop up there, people. So I'm just gonna have to deal with that for a second, and then. Okay, so here we go. We are transitioning over here. So this is the actual gameplay on the YouTube trailer, right? So let's just
Yep.
watch a couple minutes of this.
And I'm not sure if Connor is going to be too happy because the new version is like worlds of a difference better, but at least it's going to give people some reference to,
Sure, for sure.
to what's going on.
I mean, this shit's legit,
Hello everyone,
bro.
Connor here from the Kaidan team. I'm here to do a live Let's Play overview of our Project Totem Vertical Slice. So to begin, before I jump into some combat, I want to make sure that we know the two main things of Kaidan's combat. You've got your attacks, straightforward left click, you've got your combo, and then your dodges. So you've got your control dodges here. So by pressing control, you're able to dodge left and right, forward, back, whatever direction. And these are a great way of avoiding projectiles or enemy attacks when they're approaching you. If you time the dodge just right, you're able to slow down time. And if I'm good enough, I'll be able to show you that in action. So let's approach the village here.
Connor, just so matter of fact, man.
The environment and the game is all being made in
Yeah.
Unreal Engine 5. So we're able to have a very high quality and immersive environment.
Already getting some Skyrim vibes.
Oh, yeah, man.
Now the first enemy to approach us is one of our basic attack enemies. These are lantern heads possessed by an elder god. You'll see as they approach, they're very simple. They'll come and fire a fireball that if you just got to make sure that you're moving out the way. If you dodge, you're able to get a nice clear distance to get in and attack them up with after, like that. There we go. This is another variant of the lantern head, which is a melee attacker. So they'll get close to you and they'll try to club you. There's the perfect dodge. They'll try to club you with their tongue. Not much of a challenge.
So I want to stop here. I mean, this is like straight up legit, like PlayStation level. Like you guys have created a video game, which is pretty amazing to think. Like when we met you, you were kind of on this NFT journey and really even just thinking about this world. Like you have a world. This is super immersive. And to your point, it's built on the Unreal Engine 5 platform. So whatever technology you decide to end up putting on this at the end, it's going to be at the highest fidelity that you see right now, you know, in modern gaming, which is really, really cool. Any comments you want to add to here? Are there parts of this video, you made a couple other highlights that make sense to kind of fast forward through?
Oh man, I'd love for Connor to speak to that because he's been, I mean, he's the reason why this ended up happening because he just had such a strong vision for the game and
Right.
like, you know, put a lot of hard work into all the details and how they thought about it. So, I'm not sure what I would highlight really. I think it would be good for, you know, if people want to check, they can see that on our channel, just that initial gameplay to get an idea. So, you know, just sharing the link would be fine.
For this demo,
Yeah.
we're gonna
So
make
we'll
sure
share
that-
the link in the chat just so people can see this.
Yeah.
And then
Chad is asking a couple quick questions, real quick. First of all, they love it, and they love how it looks. When you say the first version, like the differences there, I'm assuming, is it just in fidelity or is it like in the action, like the gameplay itself?
Yeah, it's in. I mean, from what I understand, it's more kind of like the technical aspects were being rebuilt. So how the movement looks and feels, you know, certain kind of mechanics of the actual game.
Yeah.
I mean, the visuals are all the same, but it's like just how it works is better and how, certain movements and stuff for characters feel.
And how big is the team that's working on this game? Like how many people are working on this?
Oh man, it's been so. I mean, we, you know, that kind of scaled throughout the years. So we started with, you know, initially when we started, there were like probably like a total of six artists that were working on stuff on top of like a technical person, and then on top of Connor and Jack, kind of, you know, doing art direction and I mean, Connor does pretty much everything. I mean, he's involved in everything. From the creative to the decision making, and then you know, they had me for music and sound design. So now it's about, I think, like 6 people
Okay.
that are working on it.
that's fantastic.
And you know, it depends, like in and out, depending on the needs and kind of like what
Sure.
you know, what
Absolutely.
we're doing.
Yeah. No, I love it. This is great.
And what's crazy, I had to add this. We've had companies on here through this Web3 craze that have literally 60 people working on a game that have not created even anything tangible to what you just showed us, which is just another thing of like just the wrong and people with the wrong intentions creating the wrong thing and not providing value, like you said. And it's just so cool to know that, like, dude, 10 or less people from day one making something like this is unbelievable, and it shows that one, not only your talent, but like your just your mind and your ambitions are in the right place. So it's really, really cool to see that. As far as the G Drive, any maybe like 2 or 3 videos worth showing, or 1 or 2 videos worth showing?
Yeah, I think the top 2 things would be, so just of different types of examples. The BW Fox 2, that's kind of, an example of the cutscene in the game, that like certain
Ooh,
cutscenes that we're
okay.
doing with some and then I'll tell you the next one after we look at that.
Guess what Matt loves? Cutscenes. It's all he gets jazzed up about.
It's because we all got excited about. Can we all agree that Final Fantasy VII changed it for all of us?
Yes, it did. Which apparently Final Fantasy 16 is pretty dope. Okay, so BW Fox 2, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. I'm gonna get this up and going, and then we will watch this together. Just want to make sure I'm not cutting off the media player, which I think I was. I saw like the first beginning part of it, and I'm already jazzed. So you all should be jazzed. Okay, cool. Here we go. All right, we're gonna watch this quick. It's up and running.
死後を水に返してやった途端に謎の形をしたものが上昇し始め、深い底に埋葬された子供たちを巻きつけ引っ張り上げた。シャドウフォックスは両親を見つけたのだ。
All right, so my only feedback is I have no clue what was just said, but it sounded and looked cool. So is that just is that Japanese, or what language is that? It's just Japanese. Okay, I didn't know if you had already like created your own language, because that would have been pretty dope and badass as well. No, that's cool. So what else do we want to see?
The Spider-1 V7, that's an example of just like an ambient kind of live painting World of Kaidan scene. So we have like a collection of those.
Dope.
That's one of my favorites.
Okay.
Both like musically and visually.
Yeah, this looks awesome. And so all of the music and sound effects, you did all of that for all of this stuff, right?
Yeah, for everything in Kaidan.
That's really, really cool.
Sound design.
So are we looking at like storyboard concepts? Are these part of the actual game?
This is kind of they're not attached to anything in particular yet, but they're part of like the storyline and just visualizing certain scenes. So it's not.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
so it's
we have a whole
storyboard-esque type of stuff.
Yeah.
And then, but the fact that
I'm calling it now. These are loading screens. They're going to be loading screens.
They're loading screens. And then I thought I'll do one more, like you're actually starting to show like some 3D design elements and stuff here, and the programs that you're using, which is like, that's pretty cool. I think people don't get the look into the programs and like how things are being 3D modeled. So like that's just like these tangible assets that you're building is super cool that you sent these along to look at too.
Very cool.
But even just movements and attacks and stuff. So cool, man. Thank you for sharing that with us, because now the people actually get to see that you are actually building stuff. And in addition to that, we had an insanely robust conversation about life, ups, downs, and a lot of things in between. So, dude, appreciate your time. We do have one last question before we leave, and it's a very simple one. Don't be thrown off guard. And it's this. You have done now your a bajillionth podcast or AMA. You've been a ton of them in the space. Knowing what you knew from the first time you experienced whatever that was, and now, how do you think your time on Midlife Crisis tonight compares to other similar things you have done?
Oh man, I really enjoy the chat. It feels so cozy and natural to chat. So it was like just, having tea with friends. It's dope.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, I hope you guys keep, man, I'd love watching your podcast, honestly. So I hope you guys keep doing this and blow up bigger, honestly, because it's like there's a lot of people doing podcasts that are that don't feel, again, authentic. It feels very like organized and kind of like dry and sterile in a way.
Yeah.
So I think what you guys have is like this like nice in between of it's like you can have like such an interesting discussion, but it feels like you're chilling with friends. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people I think a lot of people resonate with that. So it would be great to see you guys keep doing more of this. I would enjoy it. Like, that's honestly what I was thinking while we were having a chat. I'm like, oh, it would be nice to watch this kind of podcast versus all the, systematic ones
awesome.
of like, do this to get
it.
better at, yeah.
You're in luck, bro. We have you're going to be 83 up on our YouTube. So we got the podcast link and we're going to continue to do it. I think, there's not everyone you're one of the top notch guests. So, I think Maddie and I have really honed the craft, and thanks again for the feedback, because that's exactly what we're going for. We've honed the craft on being able to pull information out of people that are not that talkative. But when we get awesome people like you that just have a wealth of information, like I think our podcast really comes alive, and we've had a lot of really good ones too. So I'll shoot you the link and you can comb through any of them that look interesting to you. And we're not going to stop because of that. Maddie and I talk about this all the time. We're like, we know the podcast product is good. Now it's just an awareness play, and we got to figure that out. We're still trying to solve that puzzle. But your feedback gives us 100% product market fit in, do people enjoy coming on our podcast and the experience? And thank you so much for that feedback. It means a lot. I'm going to let Maddie say his closing comments. I'll say mine.
What were you going to say, Drasko?
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Drasko.
I'm not sure if I started saying anything, but I was thinking of asking you what your favorite book from that shelf is.
Oh, for me?
Ooh.
Well, so the tough part is this shelf are classics. So how do you, to your point about a movie, what's your favorite movie? How do you choose between, Lord of the Rings, the Iliad, Moby Dick, The Hobbit? I got V for Vendetta, the graphic novel, the full one. But in terms of my favorite, these are my favorite to read. These are all like leadership, team building books. Of those, there are some favorites for sure. Mastery's awesome, but like the original old school classics, Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People are great. But I'm going to throw one out there that a lot of people haven't read. And one of my favorites is by Frank Peretti, and it's called This Present Darkness. And it's a really cool book. It's a fiction book, but it's about, it basically takes kind of, if you've seen the movie Constantine, where suddenly he could see the worlds between like light and dark and see the forces of good and see the forces of bad when most people don't see it at all. The whole book is written like you're Constantine and you can see what's happening. So as the story evolves, you can see how the forces of evil influence us and how the forces of good influence us, kind of like the devil and the angel on the shoulder, so to speak. But it puts them in an actual, like there's a war going on, very much like Constantine in terms of how that is, but it's a much older book. And so it's just a really cool way to look at things. It was a really great story. It's a series, but yeah, that's the first one. Yeah. Nobody's ever asked me that. I like that. That's a good one.
That's a good question. And I love the fact that you use the word dope, because I use it all the time too. And we both,
a lot of people with it. Yeah, a lot of professional people.
Both live in San Diego now. Shit, man, Drasko, I knew this was a love match made in heaven. This is fantastic. All right, Maddie, I'll let you say your closing comments from the conversation. I'll say mine. and then we will close it out and call it a night. And then Drasko, like 5 minutes after, we can talk about what we'll do next with all the content we just made.
Yep.
All right,
man, this has been awesome. I love getting a chance to reconnect with people. And here's what's neat is to be completely honest with you, when we first talked and we started this podcast, I mean, I really had no idea what was going on with the NFT space. What I had experience with was interviews, podcast style talks, and that kind of thing. You know, I had the media background, didn't know anything about Web3. And I only know about this much now. But that being said, my perspective has changed so much, and my amount of the respect I have for people who got started in this space when there was so much buzz, but then kept going after everything came down pretty hard. I mean, I think we all know how that went. Is just so immense. And not only that, what I'm impressed with is, in the same way I said and went back to how impressed I was going into the Discord server the first time, how different it was, how engaging it was, how it kept my attention. You have managed to do that and keep it going to this culmination point where you're excited to really start releasing some of these big time products that you've been building to. And I think that this is exactly what the space needs. That's said too many times, so I hate to use a cliche, but the space needs wins. We need people who are, to your point, putting the value of the user first, and it's not about the dollar you can make. And here's the thing is that if you do that, it always ends up working out, right? You said it's weird when you give, when you give away, it always ends up coming back so much more, but it's not intuitive. And you've applied that, it appears not only in your life, but you've applied that to your business as well, and it shows. And so really excited talking with you, man. This really did genuinely feel like we were just having a tea or just having some drinks around a campfire, having a conversation. So you made it easy, man. You have an awesome mind for what you're doing. I'm excited to see where this goes. And I genuinely think, despite all of the crazy things that are happening with tech, Web3, AI, the way your mind works with this, I really see you rising above that. And it's going to be something that, the true creatives, the multi-layered creatives are going to emerge. I think you're one of them. So it's been a pleasure talking with you, man. I can't wait to keep it up with it. And I will get out there to San Diego eventually. I've been trying to convince Mikey to come over here on the Florida side, but I'm going to get out there eventually. We're all going to have to hang out.
I'll do.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate the nice words. Yeah. It's nice to hear.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you made it easy, man.
You do make it easy, and I'll follow it up with, dude. I don't really remember obviously the details of our conversation. I remember you and Connor being like super impactful, nice guys. Some of the more genuine guys that said things of substance compared to the shitty ass projects that we were talking to at the time, because we had to start somewhere, right? And like Matt said, we knew nothing. I was a hate beast mod. I knew that there was hundreds of thousands of people in a Discord server. I had become a celebrity overnight, and we decided to stop playing video games on our Twitch stream and talk to NFT people. That's pretty much where we were at when you met us. Since then, we have created this format. Your feedback just makes my heart warm, and it makes me excited about both of our futures. Our futures in the sense that we are really passionate about a majority of what we talked about tonight, which was you talking about dark and light, you talking about your mindset, you talking about what success and failures, like that stuff is, I think, critically important. And Maddie and I talk about this a lot, is like you delivering it as someone that grew up not in the States, that lived in Canada, that lived in LA, and that has a music background, can resonate with so many more different people than Maddie and I saying the same exact thing. And that really excites us. And you said the most impactful thing, which is just give back, man. Share shit. Like that is the actual hack code that no one really talks about. And I'm so happy that we've yet met another friend in you that shares that mindset, because that's ultimately what Maddie and I drives us, right? Is we know what we talk about is important and that it could impact one person in a meaningful way. And that's what really matters at the end of the day, I think. So thank you for sharing your stories. And I'm just throwing this out real time. I don't even know how this manifests, but I have been, and we've been reading, like, as we continue to go this podcast, having a couple reoccurring guests is always a good thing to have. I feel like we could talk forever, man. So you are welcome back on like whatever cadence makes sense. Maybe it's every couple months, maybe it's monthly because we get crazy. I don't know what it is, but some type of reoccurring conversation going down. Shit, man, like you said, we could just go down a parasite rabbit hole for about an hour and a half. Who the hell knows where we go with it? But you're just a genuinely good dude, and I'm glad to be able to call you an acquaintance, and much more than that, a friend, man. And I cannot wait to slam a beer with you or a coffee, whatever you do. If you don't drink, I can slam coffee too, but we're going to do it in sunny San Diego. So I'm pumped, and thank you so much for your time because you're busy, and that's the most valuable thing you have right now, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate you guys too. Yeah, happy to, man. Happy to come back. It would be nice. It's very enjoyable for me too.
All right. Well, with that being said, we had all the heartfelt, warm niceties there at the end. It's been an incredible 2.5 hours, people. Mikey G is having a baby this weekend or within the next 4 days. So we're going to be off for a couple weeks, but we will be releasing content. We're getting it scheduled. Maddie and I were working hard behind the scenes to try to grow that brand for you. We are still talking to people in the background. We are moving, reminder, podcast to once a week. Thursday nights is going to be the time slot, and we won't be doing twice a week anymore because we want to concentrate on balancing getting content out and not just podcast guests. We freaking love